So today I'm interviewing Kev, also known as Aquavision on Instagram. And the content that he does is like really, obviously it's unique flavor, but it circles around consciousness and spirituality and awareness and enlightenment and everything like that. So that's why I asked Kev to be on the show. So if you want to tell everybody a little bit about yourself, you can go ahead and give any background that you want to give. Tell us about your childhood or anything briefly, where you're from, where you're at right now, even though I know you told me that earlier, you told me that you're in California. But yeah, let everybody know a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. So first and foremost, Yvette, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here. I appreciate the opportunity. And yeah, so my name's Kevin, aka Aquavision. I'm an audio engineer. First and foremost, I'm a father and a husband.
Oh, I love that.
But yes, and then I am a audio engineer by trade, working from home, as well as a mindset coach, and I integrate my practice with the nature of the subconscious mind and spirituality in a blend of ways.
Mhm.
But yeah, I live in California. I was born and raised in Central California. Well, born in the Bay Area, and then raised in the Central Valley. And when I was about 25 years old in 2015, I moved to Yosemite National Park to work and experience life in a whole different way, and really changed my life. Went through a lot of craziness during that time that stretched into COVID. And around that time, I really started getting into entrepreneurism. So went from working a job as a janitor for 5 years, being really humbled through that process, being of service to others through that process, and then through losing both my parents, and just going through a lot of changes, as we all have been going through since 2020. Just started to really evaluate what mattered most to me in my life, and what ultimately was going to be, my legacy, which is all of
Mhm.
our legacies. And just starting to, think about how I was placing my feet on the ground, day by day, breath by breath, moment by moment. And so, yeah, I have a passion and affinity for art, philosophy, music. I like to rap. I like to make beats. I like to play around. I like to meditate. I like to hike. I like to cook. I like to try new things, and I like to put myself into positions where I feel like I'm the baby, and I
Mhm.
feel like that's a fun thing, is to like play the grandpa and the baby. That's like one of my favorite roles in
Oh, I
life.
like that. That's true because like as a baby, everything's new and fun, but as a grandpa, like you have that wisdom that you use.
Exactly, yeah. And I
Yeah.
like that. I like to like kind of jump in between those two. And so yeah, so that's a bit about myself.
So, and then like in your childhood, what do you think you wanted? Do you remember what you wanted to be when you grew up, or did you ever contemplate those things?
Yeah,
Or what
when
you
I was
wanted
a
to do
kid,
with your life? I don't want to say what you wanted to be because we always tell kids
yeah,
like, what
yeah,
do you
yeah.
want to be when you grow up? Like you already are, you know?
I'll be a
But like
fireman.
what,
Yeah.
yeah, but what do you want to like what do you see, what your life, where do you see your life going and what do you want to make of life? Or what did
Yeah,
you
I like
when
that.
you were a kid?
I like that. So when I was a kid, probably by the time I was in like junior high, I really wanted to just be involved in music. And that's
Mm.
like always something that I gravitated towards and found myself around, no matter whether I went to and from it. It was just always something I did, from being in garage bands all through high school, um, to being in hip hop groups and starting to get into music production and like around 18 years old into my 20s,
Hmm.
performing all during that time too, doing local shows and doing like little
Oh,
small tours and
cool.
stuff. And then that eventually unfolded into kind of my entrepreneurial pursuits and audio mixing, and it's still, I still am actively writing
Hmm.
and releasing stuff. It's just I I'm a little bit more selfish with it. My content isn't, but like just the practice itself and like the art form itself, I don't try hard to monetize it. I don't try hard to like try to scale some dream around it. Like I'm way more
Mm.
just appreciative of it itself.
Oh, okay,
And
that's
and it's
beautiful.
yeah, and it's kind of a complementary piece to like everything I do within philosophy, coaching, and like, you know, getting the land together and stuff. And I
Oh,
just
for me, I don't want to interrupt you too much, but for me, similar
Oh,
with
you're
this
good.
podcast, like I do a lot of other things that make me money, but I don't monetize this. It's just something, I love. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah, and I feel that. I feel that 100%. I think it's I think it's important to have that because like I did attempt to monetize that for quite some time and I saw some success with it, but I saw way more of just like, and this is just for me personally, because everybody's gonna find their way. But like for me personally, it felt like I was just draining myself of what I loved, you know,
Yeah.
and like I said, it's probably just more of a personal thing for me. But then I've realized that no matter what I do, like I shared with you a bit about how I just had my first session learning kung fu today,
Mm-hmm.
and the guy who I learned from, he's like way into music,
Oh,
and
nice.
right, yeah, and this happens with everything. Like when I mean, because I think most people, if they don't make music, they like music because music is sound and frequency and vibration and rhythm, and that's very innate to the human experience. Like we are
Mm-hmm.
sound, frequency, vibration. This is music. Like we're living music, you know, like in
Yeah.
physical form, and I think that no matter where I go, whether whether in the coaching realm, like I could be coaching on this, that, or the other thing, had nothing to do with music. The person that I'm involved with will be into music or creating music or going to school for music or something along those lines. Same thing with like scalar energy, which we
Mm-hmm.
talked a bit about. Um, the group that I met with, like conscious hip hop MC, totally into all these various philosophies and incorporating them into his raps and stuff. So my music is being amplified and brought out there because of all of my other interests and involvements. So I realized that like
Mm-hmm.
you're not like the things that we think maybe we want to try to monetize or build business around isn't always necessarily like what God has planned for us or what spirit
Mm-hmm.
has planned for us, you know? And that was one thing I've had to like kind of just accept over the last like year and like really own and just realize like maybe I will at some point. But the whole idea was that like I had a fixed dream, right? Like I had this idea when I was a kid of like I'm gonna tour in a bus and I'm gonna be a rock star and all this stuff. And
Oh,
it was,
yeah.
it's cool. Like it would have been still cool to do that, but I'm way more appreciative of everything else that I've had since, and like just all the crazy, zany, unexpected adventures that I've gotten into. And I mean, I'm still like I do audio mixing, so it's like I'm involved in the music industry.
Yeah.
It's just that we're always so much more capable of doing things beyond our wildest dreams. And I think that, like, yeah, I think there's a nice balance between like letting life happen and then like instigating things within life. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that oftentimes people like do too much of one or the other rather than finding like kind of a harmony and ebb and flow between the two. And I
Yeah, the
think,
ebb and flow. Mm-hmm.
yeah, like it's magic, like it's magic to essentially make things happen by letting them happen. I made a post on that, like, because the concept is like everything is divine, masculine and feminine in a relation, really in a union. But then as it breaks out into duality, then it's like masculine, feminine, so push and pull, like receiving things and projecting things. And I
Mm-hmm.
think like a lot of people in this day and age, it's not that they don't have both. Like everybody has to have both.
Yeah.
It's the only way that we could exist. But I think what happens is we oftentimes polarize. Like same thing in politics, right? Like you could see like the conservative, for example, like the extreme conservative is
Yeah.
like overly conscientious, right? An
Mm-hmm.
ideal conservative is like balance within their conscientiousness.
Mm-hmm.
An extreme liberal is open-minded and willing to try new things, but maybe to a detriment.
Yeah.
Whereas a balanced liberal is somebody who's open-minded and willing to integrate within reasonable means. And
Mm-hmm.
so, like, that's left and right hemisphere. That's yin and yang. That's masculine and feminine. And everyone essentially has both those capabilities, but oftentimes we get into these fixed modes. And me personally, I was in this fixed mode always of like being way open to like the wildest depths of my imagination, and
Mm-hmm.
then assuming that that was just the way that it had to be, which closed me off from actually being able to experience the more fruitful aspects of my imagination in the unexpected ways, and then allowing that to anchor into my daily life. So
Mm-hmm. And that makes
like
sense because for me, I feel like I was always too positive. So I never had that stern discipline because I was always like, it's going to happen anyways, you know?
me too, I relate to that 100%. I think that's like our, I think a lot of spiritualists are like that,
Yeah.
honestly. I think we're just like so optimistic to a point that we can't like refine and then implement because we're just like, oh, it's okay, it's okay. Which is true. It is true, but it's also like okay for us to have disdain. It's okay for us to have a distaste for something. It's okay for us to recalibrate, reassess, and make adjustments. And like me, I would get lazy in making those adjustments or trying to reorganize the approach because I was just like, well, what's meant to be is what's meant to be,
Yeah.
which is true. But the whole thing is like if we're just receiving, then we're just receiving. If we're just
Mm-hmm.
projecting, we're just projecting. And then but it comes back to ebb and flow, right? Like there is a day, there is a night, there is a wake, there is a sleep. And you don't sleep all day or you feel like crap, or you don't stay up all night or you feel like crap. Like there's a
Yeah,
time to
like you
sleep.
said, that balance. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The harmony, right? Yeah, the relationship between the two cycling continuously. So it's like it's breathing. And
Mm-hmm.
we find our breath through like all these modalities. But yeah, just being open to it and then allowing it to happen, um, I think it's important. Like we plant seeds and then we got to make sure that we nurture them and water them, and then they grow into something. But I was super hip like most of my life, and I still have to tame myself in this. But just like planting a ton of seeds and then not watering those fucking seeds.
I know, right? Yes. I mean, I can relate to that even in my early 20s. Like there was just so much going on and I just didn't really stick with anything or discipline. So I never learned anything like really, really skillful. But hey, like now I feel like I'm 30, but I feel like I'm just on the right track. Like even if I feel like I had gotten a late start, like you said, everything is as it should be, right? So
Right.
it's all good.
Yeah. So that's the funny thing about it, right? Like,
Mm-hmm. The paradox.
it's that like, yeah, the paradox of it all. Like, I could have been all this one way throughout my life, but it was all a precursor and a necessity for me to be where I'm at now, where I'm like, all right, now I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna be a little bit more like balanced within my approach, or harmonious within my approach towards this, that, or the other thing, be it politics, be it a dad, be it a husband, whatever. Like it all has its place. So yeah, I'm humbled every day. You know what I mean? I'm
Mm-hmm.
humbled by the experience and just constantly learning and growing through whatever means.
Yeah, humbleness is something I definitely had to learn. I feel like I was like that when I was younger, and then I like went off the scale a little bit and went the whole other direction. And now, like as I'm developing into like just maturity in my adulthood, like I definitely have been humbled as well. Like I mentioned also that my Saturn return too was very like crazy. It really hit me, like it really had me hitting the ground. And yeah, but I'll talk about that in a little bit. It's very similar. And oh, I'm
Cool.
very similar in that sense because I did dance ever since I was in middle school. So like performing was a
Oh, cool.
thing. And I didn't know that I liked being so, I guess, in front of people because like dancing was the beginning of it. And then in high school, I was in like an ASB program. So I was like always wanting to be the announcer. The teacher would always ask like, oh, who wants to be on the microphone and like, like recite this script or whatever, or just introduce everybody. And everyone, at least in my classroom, would say no. Like they were just like, oh no. And I was like, oh yeah, I'll do it. That sounds exciting. So I've always been a microphone person, which is why I got this like microphone tattoo on me. Not
Oh, that's
just
awesome.
because, yeah, not just because like the podcasting thing. Because I'm not sure if you knew, but a few years ago I had a podcast with someone else, and that ended and everything like that. But I still like loved the concept of it when we were doing it. The few little shows that we did, I really had fun with it.
What was the name of that one?
Spiritual expansion podcast.
Okay, that's a dope name. I like that.
It is. It was the partner that I was working with came up with it. The only thing I didn't like was that it's so long, but I'm used to long names. Like my real name is
Ah,
long. Illuminated Wisdom is kind of long in itself, so it didn't matter to me. But yeah, that just didn't work out, and I'm glad I'm doing it now again, moving forward
yeah,
because
yeah.
I enjoyed
Are
it.
are you Hispanic?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, so all my Hispanic friends growing up here in California like all have super long names, and then they would explain to me how like every time there's a new baby in the family, like they get grandpa's last name added on or middle name added on, and they'll have like
Yeah.
sometimes 15 names. So I was like, dude, that's insane.
Yes, some people really do that. Some families do. In my family, like I don't even have a middle name. But
Oh,
with
okay.
my kids, I definitely, since like me and my spouse were not married, I definitely wanted to add both our names. So They
Oh
have
yeah, yeah,
two
yeah, for
last
sure.
names. And then I added a middle name because I never had one, so I wanted to give them one. And yeah, I kind of like their middle names. One of them I chose Josiah, even though it wasn't like meant to be biblical. And then the other son has a middle name Indigo, which like my spouse chose.
Oh,
So
dope.
it's
I
kind
like that
of,
name.
yeah. And
I
actually
like both of those names.
It's Odin Indigo. And then it's like Taurus Montheon. And then my other
That's cool.
son is Arian Josiah Taurus Montheon.
Cool. I
I
love that.
know, right? But I'm like, yeah, so I get you. I feel you with the whole like the long name thing. I've seen it a lot.
Yeah, I like our generation is like having super unique names for their kids. Like we named our
Yeah.
kid Ukaya. So sorry, this light's probably gonna go off every now and again, but I'll like reinitiate it.
No, no
Um,
worries. That's a beautiful name.
yeah, Ukiah, and there's actually a Ukiah, California. It's way up north, and that's where my wife and I got married. And then his middle name is Aldous after Aldous Huxley.
Oh, really? I've never. Who is that? Like, I'm pretty sure it's like a bit.
Yeah, you're probably familiar with him. He was like a philosopher and a novelist. He wrote Brave New World.
Oh, okay. Yes, I heard that one.
Yeah, yeah,
Saw
yeah.
that.
And
What
then
is it like a
also,
book, right? Brave New
yeah, it's a
World.
book and it's a novel. It's essentially like a dystopian novel. But he was like heavily influential just after like Darwin and like that whole field of study. He's not a biologist.
Mm.
Aldous Huxley was more of like a philosopher. And then he gave way to I think like one or two other people that eventually influenced like Alan Watts. And
Oh,
so that's
yeah.
kind of that psychedelia like Aldous Huxley was really big into like the beatnik era. So he was influential in like pre-hippie psychedelia and like really opening the Western mind to like other disciplines and other esoteric sciences outside of just like what we knew here.
Yeah, because it's so like masculine out here.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, it is. And it's like it's very mental, right? That's like mental dominant. And as far as like left to right hemisphere, it's like incredibly, incredibly left hemisphere, in a lot of respects. Not in all respects,
Hmm.
but because of that, yeah, it comes out as quote unquote masculine or
Yeah.
projective and not receptive.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. What I meant, like divine masculine too. That whole.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I totally caught what you were putting down for sure.
Yeah. And so you're like part of the secret energy tribe too, right? Because you use understanding or you're familiar with Savant Bomar.
Nope, nope.
No.
But I'm
Oh,
familiar with
okay.
understanding.
Yeah.
But
Definitely.
I like everything you're talking about, so I'm sure that it's something I'll have to research.
Okay, yeah, because I remember also it's funny because when people come together that are like of this kind of knowledge, because a few years ago, I had a friend, which I actually have to reach out to him, ask him if he wants to be part of this show. But I had a friend that I met through Instagram, and he's the one who taught me about fasting. And so,
Ah,
because of him, it really kickstarted a lot of my manifestations. And so he was also using like all this terminology, like just better words for what we usually use. And I would tell him all the time, are you taking those classes at Secret Energy? And they're just like courses, like kind of just teaching you about sovereignty or
okay, cool.
like metaphysical knowledge and stuff like that. And so I always thought that because other people knew about that, that they were like connected to the Secret Energy like platform.
Oh
And
yeah,
so
yeah.
that's funny that yeah.
It probably all comes from like a similar lineage, because one thing I
Mhm.
noticed a lot, especially tonight, like I told you, I'm just starting to pick up kung fu, and as I'm talking to this guy Josh, who's like the sensei,
Yeah.
he's been practicing kung fu for like over 45 years,
Oh wow.
and he's very into like the esoteric side of it, which is
Mhm.
awesome because like it gives us a
Mhm.
great template to exchange.
Oh
But
yeah.
as
Resonance.
telling him like everything I'm doing with audio mixing and then everything I'm doing with personal coaching based around mindset and specifically the nature of the subconscious, like all of it applies to Kung Fu. And he's like, dude, you're doing Kung Fu in all these other disciplines. And
Oh
I'm like, yeah, well, like, it all
wow.
ties into Hermetic philosophy. It all ties into universal construct. I mean, it's potato. We're gonna give different labels and terms and systems and templates to essentially the universal way. And
Yes.
it's dope to always kind of like find that again and again in all these like different threads and different camps, if you would, and then notice like, hey, that's kind of like my cousin or my family over there.
Yeah, and you said you found this person, well, this group or community through Craigslist?
Yeah, I found this dude through Craigslist, like
Oh
on a
my
whim. You know what I
goodness.
mean? I jumped on Craigslist, and this happened to me multiple times. It's just like the divine arrangement. Like all
Mm-hmm.
praise to the Most High. Like it makes things happen. So
Yeah.
I jumped on Craigslist, and for about a year and a half, 2 years now, I've been wanting to get into some form of martial arts because I've
Yeah.
always been I'm very high chakra oriented. So I practice anchoring into all of them, but I'm just naturally like inclined in the higher heart and up, you
Yeah.
know? And
I wonder
so
if I'm that way.
possibly, but yeah, I was just like, man, like I just really want to figure out some way to like anchor in better. Like I've always kind of had a harder time being more disciplined. Like I'm
Yes.
very in tune with my femininity on the divine level of things, but when it
Yeah.
comes to like sticking things out and being structured and organized, not
Oh,
my deal,
yes.
you know?
Yep.
Like I had to
It's
grow
true.
into that.
Mm.
Yeah, and so I was just like the last year and a half, 2 years, I'm like, I really would love to do this. I think it would be a great way for me and my son to bond as he grows and like
Oh,
learn one
yeah.
another. And I was just waiting for something to come across my radar. And like over the last few months, I've been telling my wife, like I've been working from home for about 10 months now as an entrepreneur, quit the day job, and I've just been like really lonely, and I've just been really feeling like I want to connect with high
Yeah.
vibrational men, like not just like any run of the mill dude. Like I want to connect with high vibrational and intentional men and people
Hmm.
in general, but men specifically, you know, because I've never really had a relationship with like that with guys.
Yeah.
So I was just on Craigslist, just scooting around like about a week ago, and I looked at the community postings for like this general area in like a 50-mile radius, and there was like hardly any posts. There was like 4 posts. One of them was for like puppies, one was for something else. And then I saw learn kung fu in the Sierras, and I was like, oh, that's me. I
Wow.
need that. I need that. And so I
That
clicked on
sounds
it. The
cool.
dude, yeah, and the dude was just like, this is only for the right brothers or sisters. He was already using lingo, and I was like, oh, I gotta hit this guy up. So I just emailed him and then just gave him my number. We talked like within that hour, he hit me back, and we went down like an hour and a half conversation on the phone, just talking about all of our fascination with like life philosophy and just discipline. And yeah, so today I went and met him, and it was
Mhm.
like it was a wrap. Like got along with his wife. His wife is into like brewing kombucha, and we
Oh,
like
nice.
my yeah. It's like my family, you know. So I'm
Yeah.
super stoked to start training with them by the week.
Totally. You completely attracted that. Like that's law of attraction right there because the resonance, like you're about it and you found the right teacher.
Yeah, dude. And it happens like that. I've noticed it happens around this time of the year every year too. Because last year I went through kind of a slump and was just kind of feeling like just not in my vibration. And I
Mhm.
was kind of having a hard time sleeping. I was still working a day job, and it was like it taught me a lot. I love my day job, but it was just not where I wanted to be. And like one day I was just not feeling it out of it, telling my wife like I really need something. I need something to change. And then just randomly got to meet my previous coach, who ended up being like my mindset slash, like kind of law of
Like a
attraction coach.
mentor. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we ended up becoming really good friends. He's like 21 years old, totally schooled me in so many great things. And now we work together. But that kind of unfolded into me stepping into personal coaching because I realized
Mhm.
I was already doing it. You know what I mean? I think a lot of people are and don't realize it. So I
Yeah.
just owned it, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to be a mindset coach, and I'm just going to do that. And I'm going to really dial out audio mixing, and I'm just going to step away from the day job. And that kind of happened. That transpired over the course of like the last year. About 9 months ago, 10 months ago, I stepped away from working my job that I worked for like 5 years, and it was kind of a big leap. And it's still, rocky at times, but I grow, and
Yeah.
so
Oh my gosh, I'm right behind with you because even though like I have the flexibility of like I mean I work for a school too, so I relate to you when you
oh,
say
dope.
like I love my day job, but it's not where I want to be. I see where I would be if I stayed there long term, and it's definitely not for my best growth. Like that there's other ways for me or more massive ways for me to grow than be there and just do that only because takes up a lot of your energy and time. And I see that with my friends too
So
that work
much.
there. Yes,
That was
because
that was my
even
primary reason for wanting to step away, was so I could be with my family, and then I could invest in my legacy
yeah,
ultimately.
because my kids have the soccer and then they're in these like smart classes and I really have to help them out with their homework often. Like I have to be present. So
Yes.
yeah, so I stepped away from like a permanent position to be a substitute again. And like people look at that as like a weakness, like, oh, you can't be here every day or you can't commit to this job. And it's like, well, I have other things outside of this just because you don't like, I'm sorry. But
Right.
I am right behind you because I'm slowly just wanting to completely step away from it, even though I always do this again. But now actually I'm manifesting like the right path and the right things to get me to reach those goals and to like, be able to permanently step away from the day job and
Dope.
have these things. And yeah, so the community that I connect with is like the secret energy community, and like we always have these challenges that are like, it's nothing like the challenges like you see on TikTok, but we do like 40-day challenges where you wake up at 4 a.m. and you meditate, you honor the sunrise, and like those kinds of things have really been manifesting and unfolding like miracles in my life where I
I believe.
don't just come up with ideas, but like things that are just like that can be doable, that I am doing, that are going to take me to a long-term direction and stuff, because ideas flow with through me all the time. Like I
Of
only catch
course.
like 1% of them, but now I feel like I'm at least like grasping them all and like saving them for later for the right time, opposed to before it would just be like they'd come, go, and I'd never see them again.
Right, right. And I totally feel that 100% because that's like a lot of what I've gone through over this last year, especially digging into
Hmm.
the works of Neville Goddard. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the middle.
No. Oh, but let
Um,
us know because that sounds
yeah, yeah,
interesting.
yeah. It's on my list of books to recommend, so I know we'll come back to that. But yeah, he's has totally helped me transform my life. Like just studying his material. I mean, he's transitioned on now, but yeah, just learning the power of awareness, which is kind of what I would say the sort of more of the foundation behind the law of attraction, just the nature of you know getting out of the linear scope and perspective of how we like see things, and then realizing that it is natural within the moment for things to happen, and that's the only place they
Mhm.
ever can happen. And so the language, honestly, the language to like mental construct, psyche construct, like huge, right? Because you did it just a moment ago. You were like, things that I am doing, and you switch it
Yeah,
because
exactly. And you know what? That starts happening with these things that I'm doing. Yeah, like naturally.
yeah, yeah, and then it reorients the subconscious, right? And so like this is what I coach in. So like the
Oh,
basis of what I
yes.
always approach towards is that your subconscious is like a hard drive, and it'll take everything in, and it's not biased. Like it doesn't have like oh yay or nay. It doesn't have that. But like the conscious mind does. So the conscious mind is kind of like RAM, like it's being used in the moment, and it can, like you were saying, it could have all these things coming
Yeah.
through it, but it like hangs on to like 1% or something like that. But the subconscious is like taking it all in. So that's where things like affirmations and visualizations become really
Mhm.
powerful, because now if you say an affirmation, like not only do you say it, like ideally you should be able to like feel it, right, and envision it, imagine it on
Right.
all levels, as many levels as you
Mhm.
can. And when you do
Mhm.
that repeatedly, just like a meditation, it begins to anchor in what frequency, sound frequency, vibration. So like what it is doing is you're ultimately filling up your subconscious over time with more and more of this consistency of a vision or of a set affirmation, thereby not only, this is my favorite part, not only substantiating itself in your conscious day, waking day now, because your
Mhm.
subconscious is like spitting it back up to you throughout the day even when you're not intending to, but it also magnetizes you. It magnetizes you to these circumstances happening outside of you, because nothing is actually outside of you. Everything that you're
Mhm.
experiencing is inside the one, the all. So that's all of us. So we're divine in co-creation with it. So when we are in alignment with ourselves, it is in alignment with us because it is us. It's just
Mhm.
it's a project. It's like a projector. It's a projector of our innermost connectedness. So the more we're connected within, the more we're connected without. The more we're disconnected within, the more we're disconnected without. And it's like the holographic universe, I guess, is how like a lot of people are kind of like
Oh, okay. I never looked at it
framing it
that way.
nowadays. Yeah, but that's what I experienced with the miracles and the manifestation, was like, oh shoot, like the more that I was capable of anchoring it in that way. I mean, because it takes a lot of discipline. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? That
And
that's why this stuff is,
awareness.
yeah, exactly. And it's everywhere. It's there for people to know. Like all the wisdom of the ages is there. It's in library books, it's on Google, it's on
Mhm.
ChatGPT, but it's that, like, no matter what's the single common denominator in all of that is the person and their will and discipline and their involvement and their passion of it. And so that's, I think in a lot of ways, I think that's why it's available now, is because it's necessary for it to be available now because of the way that we are existing in the world collectively.
Mm-hmm.
So like we don't just have it like I don't just have it so I could like, get a Ferrari and kick it by the poolside. Like that can happen. But ultimately the reason it's occurring, I think now, and so widely available to everybody is because those who are going to be most perceptive to it and able to implement it are going to be, I think, some of the movers and shakers of the new paradigm that are going to be
Yeah.
empathetic, that are going to be, custodians to the environment they're in, the families that they're
Mm-hmm.
building, the communities that they're building at large. And I don't think that it's just for anybody willy-nilly to just grab it and play with it, because it's not just it's fire, right? Like it really
Yes.
is fire. It's spiritual fire. And you get burnt. Like I've burnt myself with it. You know what I
Oh my
mean?
goodness,
I've
yes.
manifested miracles that I was like, dang it, now I have to like own the dharmic like unfolding of all of this. And I wasn't ready. And
Mm-hmm.
and certain circumstances started happening for me and I had to play catch up. And I was like, damn, all right. Or, on the other side of it, I have things start going down for me, and all of a sudden I'm like, I'm I I have to take out the garbage of my psyche, because like if
Mm-hmm.
you can fill up your subconscious with the concept that like you're this or you're that, but it will plunge you into that circumstance, gravitate everything towards you for that. But if you have other things in your psyche that you haven't cleared out, whether it's trauma, whether it's biases, etc., you're now going to be in a confrontation internally amidst that circumstance, what would have been a miracle, but now it can't necessarily be a full miracle because there's a hindrance because of your own internal hurdles that haven't been transmuted. And I've,
Yeah.
I've experienced that a lot on my walk. And so I've really I've been humbled a lot
Mm-hmm.
on my
No,
journey of
same.
like learning manifestation for sure.
Yeah, well, it's crazy because like I literally saw an ad a few days ago. I even sent it to a friend. I sent it to my friend Dominic because it was just like, okay, so the ad was about Drake, and then the like robotic voice was saying something like, oh, if you want to learn how Drake manifested these miracles. I think it was something to do with money or just something to do with success, but it literally was saying like if you want to manifest these miracles, the secret that Drake has, all you have to do is say these 20 word thing, and then it'll all come to you. Are you ready for this? And then it said like click the link below, and then we'll give you your 20 words. And it was just like, wow, I can't believe that people are making ads for like just for basically magic, because you don't know
Yeah,
where these people are what they're gonna manifest, what their intentions are, and you're just gonna give them a formula that they haven't even earned, or came across
right.
themselves.
Right, totally. And I feel that 100%. And one of the other things that I've realized a lot in personal coaching, and I'm a baby with it. Like I've only been doing it for about a year, and I've had like less clients than I can probably count on both my hands. But amidst that, I've realized that working with people, when you expose them to these particular things, especially if you accommodate it to them personally, um, you indirectly seem to like accept their karma too. So like when
That
I
makes
start working
sense.
with my clients, like if I have a client who's hung up on this, that, or the other thing, and it might have been something I never have really had a problem with, or something I did in the past, it'll start to present itself to me, and I'll
Mm-hmm.
start to feel myself anchored into circumstances that are kind of templated around the problems they're having.
Yeah.
And I think it's like, to me, I don't know, but like I have a hunch that that's spirit essentially saying like, okay, if you want to be able to assist this person and basically join energies with them,
Mm-hmm.
then you're accepting the role of kind of having a mutual experience or a co-creation of this problem to resolve it. And so it's like, to one of us, we might be like, damn, I'm taking on this person's karma. This is terrible.
Okay.
But it's
Uh-huh.
also an opportunity. It's an opportunity to either revisit something you've already overcome or see something from an angle you've never seen before. And if you don't know that going into it, then like you get personal with these people and you're like, why is everything falling apart for me? And it's like, well, that's by design, because that's how you grow. That's how
Mm-hmm.
you establish and kind of materialize the comprehension of it, is like by being jacked up through it, basically. I mean,
Yeah.
that seems to be the ongoing escapade that I've experienced over like the last 10 years. I know you were going to talk about Saturn Return, and that played like a pivotal role in all of
Oh,
this for me.
yeah, we can
Totally.
go ahead and dive into that right now because that was one of the questions I wanted to ask Kev was just like, if you had experienced the Saturn return and what was it? Because I definitely had mine and it was during 2020, but I'll get back to that. So go ahead and
Mine
we'll
too.
dive into yours. Really? Wait, how old are you?
I'm 33.
Oh my goodness, I'm 30.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So it was just like, okay, totally. But go ahead, let's dive into yours.
Yeah. So, and I mean, if you want to jump back in time too, like we could do that anytime if you're not worried about the linear, like chronological, like
Oh,
unfolding of it all.
no, not
Um,
at all. Let's go for it.
so yeah, so 2018, yeah, 2018 was really when it started to hit for me because I was 28.
Mhm.
So they say that your Saturn return hits anywhere between like your 27th to 29th year or something, give or take.
Yep,
But
yep.
yeah, so I was 28 and it was really crazy. Like I still can't believe that it even happened. But I was living in Yosemite National Park. I had been living there for about 3 years at the time. I grew up in Central California, but I was living up there, working for the Park Service, and living in a little apartment with my wife. And I was watching The Flash. If you've ever watched
Oh,
have you ever
well, I
watched the
watched the
series?
most recent one. So no, just the new one in the movie theaters is the only one I've
Oh,
seen.
the movie. Okay, yeah. So the series is a little bit different. It's got kind of like a different vibe to it. I'm just trying to get this light to come on. My apologies. All right, there we go.
Oh, no worries. I
Uh,
hope your car doesn't die out because my battery's died out for doing that. So
no,
I'll
it,
just
it should be good.
okay.
It's a small light, and yeah, maybe I'll like kick it on here in a little bit so I don't strand myself. Um, but yeah, so yeah, I was watching The Flash, and in The Flash, the series is a little bit different than how the movie unfolds, for what I can remember. But in the series, he loses his mother initially, eh,
Mhm.
kid, and
Movie the same. Yeah.
okay, it is the same with the movie. Okay, yeah, so he loses his mom when he's a kid, and and it's that event where he sees the reverse flash, and I'm not sure if that happens in the movie as well, but
Mm.
but
No, I
in the
don't think so.
oh, okay. So in the series, he sees a reverse flash, and that unfolds into a bunch of other stuff. But eventually, what happens is, he tries to create alternate timelines because he wants to go back and try to save his mom or whatever. And
Hmm.
he creates a circumstance in one of the episodes in one of the seasons where he ends up getting both his mom and his dad killed. And
Oh.
and and I'm watching that episode, right?
Hmm.
And it's like late into the evening. I think it's like might even been when I was off season from working. But it was yeah, it was about December, just around Christmas. And my brother calls me and he said, "Hey, you better get your things together. Mom had a fall." And she was like in her 60s, right? And
Oh,
I was like,
yeah.
"Okay, all right, yeah, I'll get my things together and just keep me posted." And he hit me back up at like, actually, it was really crazy because this is where it gets kind of nuts too. But like, it was like 3:30 in the morning, right? And it was like 3:32 when he calls me, and I pick up the phone, and the clock on the oven switches to 3:33, and he tells me, "Hey, mom transitioned. Like she's had a second fall, and she's like you need to get down here." And
Mm.
I was just like whoa, like almost out
You
of my
did
body
not
with it.
expect that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, not at all. I was just whoa. And I knew nothing about like Saturn return. I knew a little bit about spirituality at this point in my life, but this definitely catalyzed a lot. And had some really crazy trips, like experiences on the whole drive down to, it was like a 2.5 hour drive to get to where
Oh my
she
goodness.
at the hospital and everything, but she was gone. Like she on that impact, she was gone. Like blood crossed the midline, so it was done, and it was so unexpected, and it was so weird that it happened while I'm watching this episode, like, and it switched to
Oh my
3:33.
goodness. Yes.
It was all blowing me away. I knew that I had already been studying some things within spirituality, so I knew that there were certain truths in this, but it was still like on the human experience side of it, on the linear side of it, it was hard as hell.
Yeah.
And that ended up like being right around the time that I was getting into entrepreneurism, trying to like work online and stuff.
Hmm.
Um, but I just started to really reevaluate like my life and how I connected to it and just what I was involving myself in, I guess. So that was like kind of the thing that started to seed my want or need to like really consider what I was doing each day and like
Hmm.
how I was spending my time. Kind of going back to what you and I were talking about with work and stuff.
Hmm.
But then fast forward to 2020. around the same time, like within 2 days of the same date, um, my dad passes, and it was at the height of COVID. He didn't die from COVID. He had
Yeah.
other, but within 2 days of when my mom died, he died, and that was on the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction.
Oh my goodness, I remember how deep that everybody was talking about when that happened. And your parents
Yeah,
didn't live together?
they did.
Okay.
Yeah, they did live
Oh,
together.
they wanted to
They, but
be
they
together.
weren't together, but they lived together because they were like really good friends. So it was really
Oh
interesting.
my God, it reminds me of my parents. Oh my God.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so in certain ways, I mean, it could have been influenced obviously from like my mom and stuff, but all things are as they shall be. So um that was basically my Saturn return, was like
Mhm.
those two events, as well as getting married. It was kind of thrown in there. They were
In
all like
that
really,
same year?
well, a year before my mom passed, I
Oh,
got married.
okay.
Yeah,
Everything's in
so
a
thank
row.
God I got married because it really helped me out.
Yeah, that's
Like
true
my
because Mhm.
Yeah, my wife just, yeah, she helped me out tremendously through all of it. But when that happened with my dad, that was like, that really sealed the deal. I got thrown into just a whole new dimension of life, as the whole world did, because of everything going on during that time.
Mhm.
And yeah, went through like 3 or 4 different moves during that time. Ended up having a kid shortly after that, deciding that we were gonna go into getting a piece of land with my mother-in-law, and
Mhm.
it all sort of evolved. Like if I look back to like 2017, I wouldn't even recognize the me now, and vice versa. Like I'm just in such a different place, and like 10 months ago, stepping away from the day gig and just being like, you know what, I'm owning this. Like I'm gonna be a stay-at-home dad, and I'm gonna like work alongside my wife. We're gonna do this. Like I'm gonna
Mhm.
my life, and I really believe that that's what we are all. I think that's what we all did for the longest time, anyways. Like pre-industrial era, like we were all working for ourselves in the community by extension,
Yeah.
and we weren't just like thinking of things in block sets and like I need to do this and have this all, because it's a security versus opportunity, like
Yes. I never
and
looked at it that way.
yeah, I never looked at it that way either until I was like 5, 6 months into it. And then I
Hmm.
started to realize, I was like, wow, I was like, the reason that I never did this was because I was hella comfortable. Like I had a job with benefits. I like woke up every day. I knew more or less what I was going to be expecting going to my
Hmm.
gig. And that was comfortable. And I didn't have to exercise my mind, you
Yeah.
know,
You didn't
I
have to
just,
think creatively.
yeah, exactly. I just show up and just do my day, and then
Hmm.
like I knew what I was getting out of it. But that in and of itself, the lack of exposure to risk was basically killing me. Like on a
Hmm.
spiritual, it was killing me. But I was secure, like in the eyes of the economy, in the eyes of like my family, in the eyes of society's expectations, status quo. But I was dead spiritually. Like I was dying. I was like, just I was getting depressed. I was feeling just mentally drained. It wasn't working because like you were saying, I wasn't being creative within my imagination. I was just
Hmm.
synthetic, just
Hmm.
day in and day out bullshit. And so yeah, so when I woke up and I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna like do this. My wife was on board too, and she had actually gotten sick during the time, and I had to stay home from work to take care of her. And it was kind of dealing with the politics during that time of
Oh
like
yeah.
my work trying to pull at me to like, and I'm like, you guys need to buzz off. Like this
Oh,
isn't
I thought you
cool.
meant like the politics on media. I get you though, but just
Oh
the
well,
fight, the back and
that too.
forth.
But
Uh-huh.
but yeah, I meant like, yeah, not like literal politics, but just the politics of working a job. Like we all know that, where it's like you call in, you might even have sick time or vacation, but if you like call in, people socially kind of make you feel bad for it
Oh
because
my goodness,
that.
yes. I feel like I'm the only one that feels this way because I love to use my hours. And sorry to interrupt, but I literally
Oh,
just
you're good.
worked. I worked with someone last year and he was such a cool dude. Like everybody loved him, right? Like he was just the best. He even had this pug that he would bring to work like on just like very special days. And I remember, I called off a few times, and I know that the teacher that I was working alongside with would be bothered because she went to work every day, even if she was sick. And then I go into the staff lounge and hear this really cool teacher dude says, like, he's just kind of like showing off and saying that he still has all his sick hours and all his vacation hours because he never uses them. He says he probably has like so many, I forgot. And so last month I found out that he passed away because I'm not at the same site anymore. So I didn't see him, but he passed away over the summer. And, it's just that thought of like, you had all these vacation hours and sick days that you never took because you were like just hardcore in your job or you wanted to cash that out later on. And then this happens. So it was a really like,
Right.
life lesson for even the people around me that I had to tell this story to.
Yeah, that's heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like what worth is like it's the same thing with money, dude. Like I've been really realizing that a lot being on my entrepreneurial journey is that like so many people are coming at it from the angle of wanting money.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing that sucks about that on a personal scale and then on a social and like larger community scale is that we're like we're we're blocking the flow of energy on a collective scale because we're like I want to save, and then
Mm-hmm.
what it creates is a lack of taking risk and taking chance, and then also within yourself, trust within life. And then so then people end up spending their money on stupid things that
Yeah.
really don't mean anything. And I'm guilty of it, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But it's like in ratio, it's like I'm thinking way more consciously on like where I'm using this stuff now. Why? Because what is money? Like money is ultimately bullshit, as a lot of us know. But
Mm-hmm.
then on the other side of it, what it does represent is it represents our time and labor
Yeah.
allocation. So it's like you said, like this guy, he could pride himself in going and working for this other person's concept and idea and like being there every day and being an obedient person to that. And that's all fine and well. But in the end of the day, like, dude died. Like, that's a perfect example of why we should all grip life, you know, excuse my language, but like by the balls and like
Mm-hmm.
live it
Mm-hmm.
because
Especially
it's
not
not
make others feel
promised.
bad for doing it, right?
Right, exactly. And it's like and like going into like the Gary Vee side of things, right? Like you should not be living your life per someone else's terms, especially not like your
Yeah.
parents or somebody that's like in your family judging you about things because
Mm-hmm.
ultimately they might not have lived into their own dream. Like they might have done that because of whoever came else before them or someone else they worked with or was in their family group or social group. And
Yes.
realistically, we're all selling ourselves short because like we all learn and grow in so many unexpected ways. And that's one thing that Spirit's been showing me a lot because it took a lot in me to like really accept that, like, okay, and I'm doing this. Like, I'm going to figure it out. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to figure it out. Like, I'm not going to have the promise of a paycheck. I'm not going to have the promise of security and knowing this, that, and the other thing are going to unfold. I have to schedule myself. Like, I just have to trust that. And I have to trust that somebody did that before and they came up
Yeah.
with these grandmaster plans that they put us into called corporations and called like infrastructure, etc. So like
Yeah.
why can't we be that creative, you know what I mean? and
Mm-hmm.
and on the other side of it, I think what happens when you do this is like this is beyond what I think anybody could sell you in like an online course or like what I could do within one of my coaching programs or anything. I think the person gets to learn themselves in a way they could have never before because they're required to. Like
Mm-hmm.
you're not required to if you have like a set thing. You're just like, oh, I know what to expect. I know how to template it. Da 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 da. But when you don't know, then suddenly you're picking up opportunities that in all other cases you would have had to turn down because you're like, no, I got to be here at this time. I got to do this thing at this time. I can't, I can't,
Yeah.
I can't, I can't, I can't. You got to spend a lot of no's when you're like, no, I'm working on someone else's time. But when you take it all to yourself, like a lot of people, that's scary, right? Because you're like, where am I going to get the money? It's like, that's
Yeah.
not a problem. Like that
Mm-hmm.
question is not a problem. That question is good because it's going to make you move. It's
Yes.
going to make you get resourceful. It's going to make you get open into like, well, how can I get the money? You know what I mean? Not the idea of like, oh, I'm not going to, because he's not, you're not going to. Like,
Mm-hmm.
money's everywhere, money's everything. So, like, we attach it to everything. So, realistically, it's a direct result of how much value you generate within your life and within others' lives.
Yeah.
And
Like
that's what
really
I've
like you are the money, basically.
exactly, we all are because we all make this thing function. Like you think about it, like business fundamentally, like most people
Yeah.
think, oh, it's money between people to people. It's like, no, really what it is it's people working with people and people being of service and providing opportunity to one another. And if people
Mhm.
thought about it like that, we'd be a rich world. We
Yeah.
wouldn't have the disproportionate distribution of wealth the way that it is, because
Oh my gosh.
people's
Yep.
psyches collectively would have shifted. They would have been like, oh no, I want to contribute. Why do I want to contribute? Well, because everybody's me, because everybody's another version of my life force. So like,
Yes,
of course,
yes.
I'm going to be a steward to them and respect them and see the divine orchestration in that, you know? So that would shift the tables. And then money would be kind of like this. It could still work. It could still be a functional throughway. It's just
Mhm.
that we wouldn't see it as the drive. We would see it as the throughway. And I think that's the big thing that's changed a lot for me and is still changing for me every day over the past year. Is like now I'm seeing it as like, oh well, like what is money? Like what is it in the end? It's like, well, it's like whatever the hell you want to make it, you know, because
Yeah.
that's what it is per the Federal Reserve anyway. So it's like
Yes.
it's hope,
Mhm.
it's trust,
I like that.
and and it's like it's funny, you know what I mean? I just yeah, I really believe in the value of intrinsic the intrinsic nature of value that is already innate in people. Like it's
Mhm.
there, and that is the driving factor. That's how we created the concept of money. That's how we created the concepts of education, institution, etc. And I think the more people can get open to that, the more they can realize how much they have laying like dormant potential within themselves
Oh, I
that's
love
worth
that.
way more than any money. It's worth way more than any fame. It's worth way more than any BS like acquirement that we've been promised or we think we want. Because it's like life has a way, spirit has a way of showing us how much value we all house, being a direct co-creator with it, not being something
Mhm.
that's like an alien to it, you know?
Yeah. Like we've all been given like an allotment, like spiritually, like deep down, it's in our lineage, it's in our blood, it's just in the ethers, and people don't realize it. Like when you say dormant, I think of that same word like latent, like it's not like it's unknown, like it's not being used, you know? Yeah.
100%. 100%. Yeah. And something that I've been really getting into lately, and you may or may not be familiar with the term. I feel like you probably are since you're pretty active online. Is scalar energy and scalar technology.
That yes, I've seen that, but I'm not like I forgot already what it is. Scalar, scalar.
Yeah, for sure. So if you or any of your viewers want to tap in, I would recommend checking out Zero Point Frequencies. I collaborate with them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and basically, what scalar energy is, in a nutshell, if I could sum it up, because I'm a baby to it as well, but I'm passionate about it. Scalar energy is what it's 0 point energy, chi, ki.
Oh, okay. I've
Uh,
heard 0 point energy, but no. But yeah, oh my gosh. Okay, I get it.
yeah. So scalar energy is what Nikola Tesla was working with, and essentially what I mean is God energy, like for lack of a better term.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not electromagnetism. It is the foundation by which magnetism comes to be
Mm-hmm.
within how we experience things in this physical state. And scalar energy, though, can be essentially EMF blocking. So it
Oh,
can
yes.
yeah, it can neutralize EMFs. It can calibrate your meridians. So like as you move any of the technology is relatively easy to come by and
Like
create.
orgone and
Uh,
stuff, right?
exactly. It interconnects with orgone. And I believe that it's functioning in a similar way using scalar waves.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but what happens is you essentially create like you essentially create 0 point frequency. So if you were to take like copper is actually a crystalline structure,
Mm-hmm.
and you can move it, you can rotate it and twist it into spiral formations, and then you can measure out cubit length. You can wrap it into a circle, which is like formerly now known as tensor rings, and a lot of people are starting to develop them and create them.
Mm-hmm.
And when you use these, you can create them at different proportions, but they just have to be at the right size in cubit form. And you can like wear them around your wrist, you can wear them around your head, you can wear them around your neck, you can have ones that go around your body. But essentially, what happens when you have access to these is you can attune yourself in a similar way like Reiki can be utilized
Oh,
in
yeah.
combination with these, and like or prana, chi, as we all call it, different things. But essentially, what it's doing is it's playing on the harmonic tendencies of the universal pattern of
Mm-hmm.
life.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean we are instruments of scalar, like our bodies being divine
Yeah.
architecture
That makes
basically.
sense.
And these are just devices that we're using crystalline structures, just like crystals. Crystals can also
Hmm.
be combined in with scalar technology. But fascinating stuff. I don't even remember how I got here because I'm kind of I'm an air sign. I'm an Aquarius, so I'm just like when I
Oh,
open
okay.
up, I'm like and just stuff jumps all around. So
I'm a water sign, but like you know how you oh, that's another reason why I kind of like thought you're from that same community because we also do that thing where we line up the planets with the day. You know how in Spanish you like the moon is Monday and all that, right? So I
Mhm.
was like so basically a five is a Mercury also, and so I'm a five because I was born on the 23rd. That's 2 + 3, and that says a lot about you, like versus just your whole like life path number. That would be just your forgot what they call it actually. That would be your path number in, I guess, our community, and then destiny number. No, that would be destiny number in our community, and then the life path number would be that whole number that you add up when you do all the digits of your birthday. But yeah, that the day that you were born tells a lot about your energy too. So what day were you born actually?
The 31st of January.
Okay, so you're a four. Okay, and you say that discipline's not a big thing with you, huh? So you struggled with that, and now you're on this path of like the martial arts. So yeah, four is all about discipline. You know, it's like the reason why we have like four legs on a table, four legs on a chair, like the foundation has the four
This
corners.
square house
Yeah, exactly. So yeah.
makes sense. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's beautiful. I love numerology. I'm not like super adept in it, but I know a little bit.
Okay.
Um,
So I guess
but
this
yeah,
comes
that
from like joyish numerology, I believe is what it's yeah.
yeah, that's cool. Yeah, and it makes sense. So something that was always kind of like counterintuitive to me when I first started studying astrology, numerology, etc., was that when I would come across, I can't get this freaking light to come back on. There we go. So whenever I would find things that would say like, "Oh, this is what my focus is on in life," I'd oftentimes notice that it was something I was inefficient at, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
"Well, why is that the case?" And it's because it's the detriment, and your detriment is like what you're here to work on. So like it's funny because the way that my charts would read out is that like I would have dysfunctional family, I'd be
Mm-hmm.
dysfunctional within like, business and or education. And then as I transition through my life, I would form family and it would be like very close and like structured. And then I would formulate and create business.
Mm. Okay. And how did you learn that? Is that from like numerology you're saying? What was that?
So it well yeah so it's going to tie into all of it. So because we're like going back to what we were saying at the beginning of the episode, um everything, whether it's a human institution or study or practice, is a template, and that template is essentially studying sacred tendencies,
Yeah.
universal like projections, which are already there.
Like
Like
your own
any
blueprint.
yeah, when we build our own blueprint, we give it labels and we give it terms, and then we say, "Oh, look at these things and how they relate." So numerology ties in very directly to astrology,
Hmm.
and then astrology, ties into like all the mythos, all the different mythologies of the times and ages, and
Hmm.
that all unfolds and connects to how we all live our lives, and then that all unfolds into how we know ourselves within our emotional mental sets, like
Yeah, wow.
because everything is a fractal, you know what I mean? Like the
Hmm.
all is in the all, going back to the principles of mentalism and hermetics.
Hmm.
So or we're all made in the image of God,
Hmm.
because all that stuff influenced Judeo-Christianity because the ancient Israelites were in Egypt and Kemet, etc. So I mean
Yeah.
it's all a similar lineage. It's just that we're creating all these various cultural overlays, and then we all get like, the languages change. I mean, over 100 years languages change so fast.
Yeah.
So like we're basically reinterpreting the same thing, which is really funny.
Yeah.
um
Okay. So like you're saying the detriment, like if you base, yeah, like if you don't, if you want to get to the top or the peak in your life, you basically have to overcome that detriment.
right, exactly, yeah. So like my kid is like, one of his is he's a water sign, he's Pisces, but his
I'm a
is
Pisces.
like
I'm water.
oh, dope, okay, cool. Yeah, so he one of his is and I don't know if it's because he's a Pisces, it might be because of one of his other planets, but um one of his big things is like boundaries and limitations. It's like a really
Hmm.
hard thing for him. So
Hmm.
because boundaries and limitations are hard for him, he has the opportunity to become incredibly good at them because they are a challenge within his life. So what is your detriment is not what's going to necessarily impair you, though it can. It's an opportunity for you to grow in depth with.
Mm-hmm.
And
It could be
that's
your
what I've
strength,
experienced all my
basically.
life. Like, yeah, right, exactly. Because if you're not giving into it, then you're growing through it, and you're being exposed to it, and you're integrating, and then you're alchemizing, hopefully. And
Yeah.
so thereby, because you've gone through the shit and the storm of it, then you have more insight, inner awareness to give to the next person.
Mm-hmm.
So like, yeah, like those challenges and all those setbacks and mistakes are like the gold, really, which is
Yeah, like
ironic.
weaknesses to strength, weaknesses into
Yeah,
strength.
exactly.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Right. This is the parable, or this is like this is the mythos of Christ, of Jesus on the cross. Like that's the whole concept of it. Like it's whether you want to look at it literally or not, because I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
there is literal stuff to it, an historical event that take place around it, as above, so below, as within, so without. It's
Mm-hmm.
everywhere. But the mythos of it, the underlying allegory of it, is the concept that you are willing to take on the worst of it so that you can expose the best of it.
Mm-hmm. I love
And
it.
that's everybody. That's why
Yeah.
everybody's supposed to take on their cross. That's why everybody's the meeting point between the shit and the shine. And
Mm-hmm.
and as we get thrown into it, if we don't become it, we become through it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like the whole idea of being in the world and not of it. Like we can see all this craziness going on. Like who doesn't? You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Either numb out to it, or you know it's going on, but you know that it's ultimately not going to do you any good to
Mm-hmm.
continually watch the news and continually absorb all this bullshit media. So
Yeah.
what do we got to do? Well, then we got to look at it, we got to study it, and realize that isn't doesn't have to be the totality of what we are in it. And then we realize that we can see that there are ways in which it's efficient at doing what it's doing and convincing of us of what is going on, although it's not what's going on. And
Mm-hmm.
then we can reverse engineer it, and then we
Yeah.
can alchemize it. And that's like why we're all living this right now in this timeline. Like we're experiencing our unconsciousness. Every
Mm-hmm.
single one of us is experiencing it through all these other forms. And
Yes,
so
I
the
wish everybody was so aware of this. Maybe
well,
we're getting to that point. Yep.
right. Well, and that's what it is. Like even for those of us that are into spirituality and into higher consciousness, we still have a lot of voids to fill.
Yeah.
And
A lot
so
of
as
learning.
we have those voids to fill, the only way that like you or I or anybody else, like maybe in our peer group, are going to wake up and get more disciplined with it is if we
Mm-hmm.
see things crumbling.
Yeah, exactly. Because like
So
how
we
you mentioned with your Saturn return, like similar with me, even though I was into spirituality and consciousness before the whole Saturn return thing, like that was just like the end of all of my bullshit excuses, the end of all of my lack of wanting to grow, the end of all of like my ignorance, even though like I'm still gonna keep learning, I'm still a student of life.
of
But that
course
was just like it for me too, like, and I wonder if because I often have brought up Saturn return to other people who are not really aware of consciousness and things like that. But I feel like sometimes either they're not aware of like their things, or maybe even the Saturn return is supposed to be so worse for some of us because we're going to teach this stuff to the people later.
that makes sense. I mean
Yeah.
that checks out my book.
But
Yeah,
yes,
and
I've definitely asked people and they'll just be like, I don't know, I didn't go through much, or they'll say like I just moved houses or something like minor. Yes.
mhm. Yeah, and it could just have to do with like so. I mean, I'm a firm believer that ultimately everything is as it should be. So like we we experience ourselves as individuals, but like there is no such thing as individuals that are separate. Like we're all, for lack of a better term, we're all one big like mesh of an organism,
Mm-hmm.
and we're experiencing the one self through the many. And I think that in a lot of ways, like they are us. So any of us, yeah, like you were saying, was a great way to sum it up. Like if any of us is going through it, all of us is going through it, because we all that like all of the things that we've inherited from spiritual practice of the ancients and the masters before, like that was other versions of us. So
Mm-hmm.
so like anybody who maybe they aren't aware that they're going through a Saturn return, or maybe they in a certain timeline, us in another timeline, aren't having that rocky of a road because it's not necessary for them,
Mm-hmm.
like based on the way their planets are, based on the way the
Yeah, you're right.
conjunctions happen for them. And you know they're still us. So in the end of the day, like this is the whole thing. You're familiar with Hermes, yeah? Hermes
Mhm,
Trismegistus.
mhm.
Yeah, so like he's said to be reincarnated 3 times. And I'm not here to like debate with anybody on whether that was literal or not, but
Yeah.
like my whole thing on reincarnation is that if we're all one, and I feel like most spiritual people kind of resonate with that idea, whether how deep they go into it or not is different, but if we're all one being, represented as many beings,
Mhm,
then you're already reincarnating actively. You know what I mean? And there's like this idea that like you're gonna die and then you're gonna go into living a different life. But I don't
mhm.
really think that that's how like the one works. Like
Yeah.
the one is already everyone,
Mhm,
and then we're experiencing it. We feel as though we're experiencing it in this given moment at this given time as this person over here or that person over there.
mhm,
But I think that that's kind of like the thing I like to use to relate it to is like this: like you have 5 fingers on your hand, and I could tell you like, okay, put up your index finger and like focus your consciousness on the tip of that finger, right?
mhm,
And then like you're way more aware and way more in tune with that finger, and you can like seriously, I mean, you could probably like feel the energy in it. You could like really get into the nerves of it,
mhm.
and you could even get to the point where it almost feels like everything else is in your peripheral, like the rest of your hand, your arm, your other ligaments, your you know the rest of your body. But you're like you almost become the tip of your finger with how much
Mhm,
like
mhm.
focus you put in on it. And it doesn't mean that the rest of your body still isn't there. It just
Yes.
means that you're really concentrated consciously in on that finger. And I feel like that's the way that everything is behaving
It's
as what we call
operating.
separate people. Is
Mhm.
that you have the one conscious mind, you call it God, you call it the all, you call it spirit, what will, you know, whatever works for whoever. But the way that it can come to know itself and learn itself is by all of its representatives, and
Mhm.
all the representatives are all of us, and not just us, but I think even you know the trees and
Yeah.
the planets and you know all of the various systems that exist in life. And yeah, so it's like it's one of those funny things within reincarnation, because it's like I don't know, is there a soul trajectory? Do you actually like can you recall a timeline and then jump into a new one? Possibly. I'm not here to argue against that, but I think it's a lot simpler than we sometimes think of it in the human terms. And I think
Mhm.
that like life itself is just is. It just
Yeah.
is. And then we experience it, and then we we get really accustomed and comfortable into identifying with it like in human terms, or
Yeah.
in media terms, or in said given terms, and then we forget that that's just like a framing, and that that's not the actuality of what life is, or like what spirit is, or what soul
Yes.
is.
Mhm. Especially with all the whole like capitalism and what they do to like make us feel that these like material things or these problems on TV are really like important, you know? So that stuff just like sucks everybody into that the
Yeah,
matrix.
we need like more conscious capitalism, right? Because it's like like capitalism at its best, or its worst, is the coupling of capital, the formation of capital in combination with the exchange of goods and services. And then like obviously people weigh in on trying to manipulate and make the you know
Mhm.
supplies go down, so then demand goes up, and that's like
Mhm.
unconscious capitalism, vindictive capitalism. But like
Mhm.
capitalism at its best would be all of us rendering amazing value for one another through goods and services,
Mhm. That
whether
were
that be for
useful. Mhm.
yeah, and then harboring that, because a good capitalist, like a really good capitalist, especially like early America, you see good capitalists. There's still good capitalists to this day. Like we're
Mhm.
benefiting, like we've got shirts, we've got houses, we've got conveniences, but we're being also sold lies, like you said. So like there's a yin and a yang, there's a good and the bad with all of it. There's a push and a pull with all of it, and like what it comes down to is like what is the intention, like
Mhm.
because of the thing within how we talk about God or the devil. Like what's the
Yeah.
difference? Well,
That is the difference.
the intention is the difference, because one is short-sighted and it wants a quick gain, whereas the other sees the whole picture and is trying to look out for the longevity and is patient in
Mm.
how it's going to unfold. And like, to
Mhm.
me, that's the difference between the mindset of God and the mindset of the devil, which I think any entity is capable of.
Yeah.
And what's the base root behind that? Intention. I like the idea behind this is the only me. I want it now. I don't care what it
Hmm.
takes to get there. Versus, oh, you know what? This is the real me,
Hmm.
and I'm gonna do whatever it takes, no matter how long it takes to get there.
Yes, exactly. And then that's like, I mean, that's just like a whole, like, it should be like a rule to life to just make sure that you're not doing things hastily, just trying to get like short, what would they call it? Like, like just short, like you said, short outcome. There's the better words for it. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
because at the end of the day, and you know what? Some like people might even mix this up and be like, oh, well, my job is gonna be that like long term and everything like that. But we already mentioned how you said it sucks them out of their creativity, it sucks them out of really owning their own life. But like other things that we're talking about are like making money, like you said, like even like business ideas, like trading and everything, that short wanting to get a instant gratification or instant outcome, it's going to be the death of you because you're not going to learn what you were supposed to. You're not going to go through the actual process that you were meant to go through. And it's just, yeah, you shorthand yourself.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It is a rule of life. You know what I mean? It's like it might not even be one that's spoken by humans all
Yeah,
the time.
exactly.
It's that way. You just outlined how it is a rule, because if I go short-ended and I just try to get the instant gain, the instant gratification, I'm gonna miss the lesson. I'm gonna lack the wisdom. But if I
Mm-hmm.
wait out and I study and I observe what's going on and I learn from my mistakes and integrate, well, then I can actually gain the growth. I can gain the next plateau. So
Exactly.
it is a rule of life. The thing is that it's not written maybe as much as it as it could be, but
Mm-hmm.
even if it's not, it's still there. Like it's innate. It's innate in the fabric of existence. So like, yeah, you can't get outside of the karmic law of it all, which is really beautiful, I think, because that would mean that everything is as it should be, because the all is in the
Yeah,
all,
that's a
and
good
we're all
point.
to God, and God uses all things for his ultimate, like, how do they say, like the ultimate design of
Mm-hmm.
God is using all elements.
Yeah.
So even if we look outside our window or we look on CNN or we see all this BS that we interpreted as, it's there for a reason. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
mean that it might not be there for the reason they're saying or the way that it's depicted and the way we assume when we're young, but it's all there for a reason, because it catalyzes us into our evolution personally and collectively. And so like everything is as it should be. Now it's a matter of us gaining enough wisdom and experience to realize that everything is as it should be. And we maybe were just short sighted and not willing to take the lesson and integrate through it because it's not comfortable. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? Like it
And
wasn't
I
comfortable for me to accept my. Oh, go ahead.
No, not at all. I just wanted to say, like, I feel like it correlates with that biblical quote, like, only God can judge me, because like we're almost talking about judgment here, right? Because it's like when that quote really means like only God can judge me, like if you do see yourself as God, or if you do know that all of us are God at the end of it, then you know that you shouldn't be judging others or circumstances in others or ideas of others or people in general. You should first just not correct yourself, but take a look at yourself and grow within yourself instead of trying to force other people to do it. So yeah, you talked
Yeah,
about your childhood, your birthplace, any values. Do you feel like you had any gifts when you were younger? I know you said you liked music and everything like that. Was there anything that you felt like you were just really good at naturally?
um, I feel like as a kid, I was just always really compelled to just like going deep into things.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like I was at a really young age, I was like just noticing like how strange it was that we had like we all had two arms. I not everybody, but
Oh
like
wow.
have like, arms. Like I always been really philosophical. I didn't have that word when I was a kid, but
Yeah.
like always been curious as to how and why things are. Like what, like how far out does space go? Like that was an instant thing with
Mm.
it. I'm like, this doesn't, like I can't, based on the English language and based on like the Western like framing, how does that even work? And I'd like ask my dad as a kid, like why are we here? Like why do I,
Oh, that's cute.
you know it's strange. Like,
That's so funny that you as a kid asking that, because like my kids have asked me that, but when I was a kid, I never asked my family those questions, me thinking I'm like so close to my family or whatever, and never bothered to ask those kinds of questions or even probably think of them. Even though when I was younger, I did think or believe in reincarnation. So like when I was in my room once, I cried because I was just imagining myself reincarnating, and I didn't know anything about reincarnation. I wasn't religious. My mom never took me to church or anything. And I was just sitting in my room. I think I was like 8 years old and just saying, like, thinking, like, wow, when I die, like, I'm probably gonna like leave this family, never see them again, and then go into another life. And I just started crying about it. And so, but yeah, like, that's crazy for you to ask those questions, because my kid, like, at 8 years old, will ask me, like, who was the first person in our family that was born? Like, there was some other
oh,
question they asked, and I always write them
oh,
down because they're really nice questions.
yeah, that is a great question. Like my wife, you said you're in education, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so my wife taught for a while. Now she's just like full-time homemaker and mom, and she's getting into entrepreneurism too and stuff. But she worked in the school in Yosemite, and
Mm-hmm.
not per se, but it was like more or less a Montessori type
Oh.
like arena of education.
Mm-hmm.
So like we raise our kid that way in a lot of ways, and when he asks questions, well, he doesn't ask questions, but once he starts asking questions, we will, you know, we will ignite that more just through
Mm-hmm.
question, because that's the whole thing, right? Is that like adults oftentimes, and sometimes it's necessary, which I'm sure I'm going to learn a lot more on my journey as my kid ages, but adults oftentimes will kind of short end those questions, or they'll short end um, ideas about things within life, and they'll just give their
Yeah.
kids certain answers or fixed ideas because maybe they actually think it's the truth, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe they try to keep their kids safe, or maybe they don't want their kids like asking these questions. But in a Montessori sort of way, like if they were like, hey, why is there bark on a tree? But I don't know why. Why do you think there's bark on a tree? You know? And then
Mm-hmm.
they're gonna ponder, and then maybe they're gonna come up with like 10 things that don't even make sense. But the whole idea behind it is that you don't teach them what to think, you teach them how to think for themselves. And
Mm-hmm.
that's like, I mean, my that's the one thing I will say about like my growing up is that I felt like there was a lot of dysfunction like growing up, but I also see that like my nuclear family loved me, and that they ultimately gave me a lot of space to learn myself. And I'm like
Oh.
super grateful for that, because for a
Mm-hmm.
long time, especially throughout my teenage years, super angsty, super regretful of like my parents splitting up, super regretful of just all the things. Why did you do this to me? Why am I in all this bullshit mode? This is all their fault.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but then like we go through that, and then just coming to realize that like all of that was necessary, because I wouldn't be the
Mm-hmm.
person that I am now, and I wouldn't have tried to establish the values that I've established.
Right.
um so
Especially when
yeah.
you're as a kid going through divorce, because you just like, I mean, as a kid, it's like the world is ending, but you don't realize how many things you learn when your parents leave each other and then have to depend for themselves. And then just like with me as well, because my parents also got divorced when I was like 15, 16. And that
Mm,
was like a vital age for me. I started partying after that because they were no longer really concerned with me. They were concerned with their problems a little bit more.
of
But
course.
in that exploration of those years, I learned a lot.
Yeah, dope. Yeah, I could relate in certain ways. Yeah, and it's yeah, they're just hurt. I talk about this within curses with my clients. Like some people are like woo woo about curses, and they're like, oh, like there's this the voodoo curse and da da da. Like, I'm not here to dismiss that, but I think that fundamentally it comes down to energy, and it's like their patterns and habits of energy. And so like it's essentially like ancestral trauma. That's what we're all dealing with when we're experiencing the hardships of our nuclear family growing up. So it's like if our parents are going through like a divorce for one reason or another, or they're just at each other's throats for one reason or another, it's not like, number one, when we think we're a kid, we think it's our fault. So we take it on instantly because of that. But the other side of it is that like they are hurt children inside their minds, you know? They're hurt. Like they might not have actually done it to one another. You know what I mean? They could be
Mm-hmm.
traumatic responses from
Their
like their
childhood. Yep.
yeah, exactly. Or like, yeah, their peer group or one of their past lovers or something like that. And then it wasn't them, right? Like, cause then their parents, like maybe they were in World War II, or like maybe that, and it just keeps
Mm-hmm.
going. And that's generational curse in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just woo woo and unexplained stuff. It's just that like we're all hurt people. Like we're born hurt. You know what I mean? Going back to what we're talking about humility, it's like probably one of the reasons we're very humble oftentimes when we're kids, because we're born. Like when you're born and you become incarnate, it's unbelievably uncomfortable. Like you were just a free bound whatever, and now
Yes.
suddenly conformed into having to breathe, and you're
Yeah, you
like,
have these limitations.
yeah, I'm limited. Yeah, I'm limited within physics and time and space now, and there's like others, and this shit's weird. Like, what the fuck's going on? So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like I think that's in itself traumatizing. That's why baby's screaming. That's why mom's screaming. Like, it's crazy. It's a crazy experience, and so we're humbled by that. And I think that's the same thing, right? Because it's like numerologically, our Saturn return is our third rotation of the nine set. So, like every 9 years, 9 months of gestation, but it's like every 9 years you go through these cycles. Well, like the second is what, 18. So that's a huge rite of passage in life and becoming an adult in our culture. Um, but when you go through these times, like you oftentimes go through a rebirthing, which is, I think, everything that a Saturn return is maybe attempting to do in certain ways. Like,
Mm-hmm.
because it's causing conflict, and then hopefully you're finding resolution through the conflict and wisdom and experience. And so, yeah, like, yeah, it seems to be kind of a turnover. So, yeah, you want to get humbled, like throw yourself in the hot water, I guess.
Or even cold, like an ice bath. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, yeah,
But
true.
yeah.
That too. Just extreme. Throw yourself into the extremes of life with risk assessment, of course. I'm big on that. Like I was into rock climbing for a while, and that was
Oh,
a big thing.
cool.
Like, yeah, it's like you're throwing yourself in big risks. So it's like you gotta assess those risks. Like don't do it.
Did you ever
Don't.
actually climb like on a real rock, or was it like indoor mountain climbing, like rock climbing, or what?
Yeah, yeah. So as I was telling you, I lived in Yosemite for
Oh, so you really were rock climbing.
yeah, like on real granite. Yeah. And the funny thing is talk about humility. Um, when I grew up in the Central Valley of California, I tried going to a rock climbing gym like a few months before I moved to Yosemite, knowing that I was going to be up there.
Mm.
When I went to this rock climbing gym, I sucked. Like I couldn't climb anything. I couldn't even stick my hands to a hold probably. Like I was just like, this is terrible. I have no finger strength. Like what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
And then I went and moved to Yosemite, and I spent a few months there. And like the first few times I went out on granite, I could actually climb it reasonably well. Like it was still a struggle, still a
Mm-hmm.
challenge, but I felt like the environment and like just being in the community and just having the sights and the it was very inspiring to me. And yeah, so yeah, totally. I've climbed on granite and gone up there. I haven't done any like crazy multi-pitch like big wall overnight kind of things, but
Mm-hmm.
I've gone up. Like I've gone up to probably like maybe 900 feet or so.
Oh my gosh.
And
That's
it's
intimidating.
yeah, I haven't done it in a while. So like, I'm not like over here saying that I do it every day. I'm by no means that type of I'm not like Alex Honnold or something. But it still holds a place in my heart, and it's shown me a lot about life and like spirituality on
Mm-hmm.
my walk.
Oh, that's nice. I know it's probably I know it's nice up there. I've been up there once, but I know well, actually I've been up there a few times. When I was a baby, my parents took me like to the Yosemite National Park. And
Oh,
then
cool.
I went up to San Francisco a few years ago. But we didn't really do a lot of like sightseeing. We went up there for this event, and then we just came back down like the next day because we didn't have a place to stay. But yeah, so it's so nice out there. Like they're just all around nature. Like I can only imagine like you try to do it indoors and you can't do it, but then you go out there and you're like actually connecting with it all. So it gives you a little
Right.
boost.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, it's like interconnecting with it all was like the huge part of it. Because like I mean, like the rocks are alive, right? Like they're moving at a slower rate. Like geology is alive. It's just crystals, rocks, they're all alive.
I know, right? Because they're rocks, they have that resonating out towards them, like the way crystals do.
Right, yeah. They're on a different like time wavelength, and we're just, we're experiencing things through our human bias, so we can't witness it as much. But it's there, and there's energy in it for sure.
You
But
said like you
but
do audio mixing, right? I wanted to also ask you like what do you mean by audio mixing? Do you do like you said you do beats, so you do like beats for others, beats for yourself? Like what else does that consist of, audio mixing?
yeah, so beats for I have them on my website and I license them out, but I produce for myself, I produce in collaboration, I produce for hire. But audio mixing specifically is like, um basically, if you create, let's say you recorded a band, or let's say somebody made a beat, you're gonna have different tracks
Oh,
of
like the
that audio.
layers, kind of like when I
Yeah, the
do
layers,
editing
exactly.
videos. Uh-huh.
Exactly. No, exactly. Like when I actually have done stuff for podcasts. I've done audio editing for podcasts. So,
Oh,
audio mixing
interesting.
or audio
Okay,
editing, I
good to
just
know.
go in. Yeah, for sure. I just go in and I chop it up, I rearrange it, I stack it, etc. And then, I'll equalize it, throw some compressors on it, just fine tune it and dial it and get it, ready for commercial use.
Oh, that's nice. Okay, that's pretty cool. What's your favorite part about that? Is it just working with beats? Like, do you ever like adjust frequencies or anything with it?
I do. I do.
Oh, okay.
I want to learn more, and I'm going to apply more like over the years. But I know how to attune, to the different sacred frequencies.
Oh,
I'm
nice.
learning more about it every day.
Do
But
you
yeah,
have
no,
a
I've done some.
frequency list by any chance? I'm just like wondering because I have one. I could send it to you, like a list
Oh,
of like
please do.
this.
Yeah, you can send
Yes,
it to me.
okay. I'll send it to you for sure.
I don't have one. I picked up things over the years, and then one of my good friends from Zero Point Frequencies, Sean, he's or Amethyst Flame, you might follow him. He's a pretty cool dude. You would love to interview him too if you ever need another person.
Totally.
Amethyst Flame 333. So it's
Mhm.
cool because I told you about my mom and everything, and like the 333 thing. That
Oh,
follows me
yes.
like everywhere. Like, and yeah, and since I've met them, they're like tribe for sure. Um,
Wow. I was born
but
at 12:33 a.m., basically like 0:33 minutes, but
Oh
that
wow,
third
that's
three is
cool.
missing.
Yeah, that's cool. And I'm 33 years old right now too, and this year's been wildly transformational
Oh,
and a
yeah. They
spiritual
say,
journey.
right? That's like the Jesus year.
Yeah, I've heard that too, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, it's a trip. I'm always like looking at new ways that all these things sort of interconnect and imply one another, because it's everywhere, like God's written into life. His
Yeah,
life.
like, I mean, I don't want to get any older or anything, but I can't wait sometime until I'm 33 because I just feel like they say that's such a pivotal point for a lot of people and 40, like for men as well. So,
Yeah, yeah. Well, when you think about it too, in a way, you're like you're a third of your way to your century. You're a year
mm.
off, but like 99, and then that's like almost a one third. One third would actually be what, 33.333333 irrationally.
And then like
So
Holy Trinity, that's three. And then that's, yeah.
right. Yeah. And the same thing too with like the masculine and feminine, because the masculine and feminine come together, they conceive a
Yes, they
new
create that.
rebirth, and then then that's the father, the holy mother, and then the divine incarnation of the return. So that's the son,
I
or
love that.
or the son, the son.
Yeah,
um yeah,
literally.
so yeah, literally, yeah. So yeah, my favorite thing about audio mixing though, shoot I think it's that, it wasn't this years ago, but I think that what it is now for me is that it's actually like a really great discipline to practice spirituality.
Hmm.
And specifically in it, like going back to the masculine, feminine, divine, the receptivity, the projectivity. I really love the fact that it requires me to not only be projective in my masculine approach of like, hey, I want to do this, I want to tinker, I want to edit, I want to make this thing like conform to the way I'm envisioning it.
Mm.
But I've really been able to harbor my intellectual, my mental aspect of the feminine, like receptivity through it. Like I can't just sit there and like force everything to fit. It's not about that. Like it's way
Hmm.
more of a shamanistic approach of like you sit back and you listen to the sounds and you hear what they want to have done to them. And
Oh, I
so
like it.
yeah, so that's what I like a lot about it, honestly. Is it's a meditative practice, it's a discipline,
Hmm.
and it's yeah, it allows me to be like jump in between being objective and subjective and kind of dance. And honestly, I've just been doing it for so long. I've been doing
Yeah.
it since 2008, And I was a baby when I was doing it with that then, but it can apply to so many different like disciplines. Like I've recently been doing stuff for podcasts, and that's been really cool.
Mhm.
I could do it for movies. I can do it for myself. You know, I'm a
Mhm.
musician. I like to rap. I like to sing. I like to produce. So it just kind of ties into all of that, and I can do it on the go. You know, so there's two things that like I'm doing right now. Right, I mainly do monetize and kind of make a career out of audio mixing, but I'm also intermixing being a mindset coach and working within like the nature of the law of attraction, the law of assumption,
Mhm.
etc. um, and the thing I like about doing those two things, because I also coach in the realm of audio mixing on occasion, and the thing I like between like doing the technical side of like, being of service in that way
Mhm.
is that I still get to socialize with people. I get to connect with them and help them bring their vision to life,
Yeah.
but I get to do it in an isolated way. So like I kind of like
Mhm.
talk with them for 30 minutes to an hour or whatever, maybe 15 minutes here or there, get their ideas, exchange some ideas, and then I get the files, and then I get to just like incubate with them, and I get to just sit with them
Yeah.
and open them up for like 2 to 4 hours and just go to town.
Mhm.
Whereas I get tired of that at times, and then when I get to jump back over to coaching, I get to just be with people in this kind of like environment on Zoom or in person, and I get to just talk with them. I get to be with them, and I don't
Mhm.
have to be as calculative and like and really as isolated. So it's like
Mhm.
if I'm feeling like okay, I'm way too much on this introversion tip, like I've been too
Yeah.
much of a hermit. I can jump into coaching. If I'm like I'm overexposed, I've been talking to way too many people, taking on their energy, I jump back into
Mhm.
audio mixing. So it's kind of nice to like teeter between those two.
Yeah, that's a lot of freedom. And that's what people don't have because trust me, like people who have that day job all the time, like they'll love their job, they'll love the people that they're around. But then there's just these struggles, these seasons, right? There are ebbs and flows that they go through. They don't realize that they need to engage themselves in other things, for just a little while and not just
Right,
like
right.
a 1 week vacation. Like, I mean, really like engage yourself into something else. Be this different part of yourself for a little while so you can come back to this and appreciate it because some people like they lose appreciation for their job for being there all the time every day
Yeah,
never
you get jaded.
catching that break. Exactly. Yeah, I love that you mentioned that.
Yeah, yeah, you do. I mean, I've worked more jobs than I could count on both of my hands. Like I've worked
Mm-hmm.
McDonald's, Taco Bell. I've worked all types of food. I've worked all types of retail. I've worked warehouse. I've cleaned toilets. Like so, and I've learned so much from all of them. But like the one thing that all those things showed me more than anything was that like you can learn from all those things, and like a lot of people do it for the paycheck, or they do it to get by, maybe for
Mm-hmm.
income, or maybe to have insurance or whatever. But like you could be extracting so much from all of these things, which is like you are innately anyways, but you could be doing it consciously to a point where you're like especially if you're a manager, like shout out to all the managers out there if they're tuning in. If you're a manager or you're a supervisor, an assistant or something like that, and you're working for a company, like know that you probably could be betting on yourself, and that you probably have the capacity to like form your own business, because
Yes.
like there's all types of nuts and bolts to business, but fundamentally going back to what we were talking about earlier, it's like really being in business is being of service to people. And
Mm-hmm.
you're either doing that through direct time, which is your service, or you're doing it through your creations and your ideas, which is product. and
Mm-hmm.
and then like really like there's all these other nuts and bolts to it, right? Like people say oh marketing and all these other angles, but really all that is human connection. like I'm not intentionally doing it, and you're not intentionally doing it, but we're essentially marketing through being able to share our story and being able to say what we do and how we do it. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
what marketing is. It's not having some
Yeah.
catchy brand name or catchy color coordinated like video YouTube ad. Like marketing is being really good at explaining what it is you have to do,
Mm-hmm.
and then providing that to people. and
Mm-hmm.
and you don't, and the thing is too, the crazy thing about it is that you don't even actually have to be making money to get to the point where you are making money. And that's what cut me off for years, is like thinking that the only way I could really go into business doing something is if people were paying me for it. And now I realize like I don't even have to do that. Like I actually do everything for free.
Mm-hmm.
And people are like, what, that sounds nuts. And it's like, no, the whole thing is that like you don't infinitely do it for free, but
Yeah.
what you do is just like
Mm-hmm.
every corporation kind of does this to us, but like they give us samples, or they give
Yes.
us demos, or they give us, demo products, etc.
But free
And then
trials. Yep.
free trials, etc. Yeah, and it's like every entrepreneur or small business person should do that,
Mm-hmm.
because if you're doing that, number one, you're vetting out anybody that could have bought your product and been upset. So this way, if they get it for free and they don't like it, then it's no loss. And then on the other side of it, you're getting everything into the hands of people and into the experience of their waking day. And that's the whole point. That's marketing, is
Mm-hmm.
basically being able to connect with people through your story and or the thing that you have, and them experiencing it and seeing the value in it. And if that's
Yes.
there, then the money comes, you know what I mean,
Yes.
like
And
inevitably.
it's almost like you're telling the universe also, like, you do trust yourself and you trust in the universe. So you're like just showing that trust almost. And it's funny too, because I was on a Zoom call earlier with a group of us. We were having like an orientation for people in our community. And, one of my mentors said that same thing. He said that his first, product after reaching consciousness, like after becoming enlightened and like questioning everything, his first thing that he put out there was an ebook, and he said he put it out there for free. And he's like, the mistake that like some of you guys might be making is that you're thinking every single thing that you're doing should be making you money, and just realize that, like you said, like it's literally synchronistic. So hopefully everybody can really grasp this and it'll help them. But it's like you're putting that out there for free, and you're building that almost, not, I don't want to say, he didn't use the word reputation, but you're building that foundation for yourself, and you're opening it up, and you're saying that you trust it. This won't be the only and the last thing that you're going to produce, right? Like, you're going to start doing it. It's going to catalyze and catapult you to the rest of it.
Love that. That's beautiful. That's like great wisdom that he shared, and I love it. I resonate with that deeply, because the like I am working slowly but steadily on what I call marketing mythology, and
Oh,
essentially
nice.
it's just like my template that I've discovered. Spirits showed me, life showed me that there is a very common relationship between what we call marketing and advertising, and then what is known as the mythologies. And a myth, for anyone that doesn't know, is a fictional or non-fictional tale that conveys a universal truth,
Mm-hmm.
and that truth is relatable to anybody, because it's it sizes up like core tendencies of the human experience. And that's like what a myth is. The ancient Greek
Oh.
myths, any myth, whether it's true fictional or nonfiction, it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter, right? Like Harry Potter is a myth, and like the stories in the Bible are myths. Whether it's true
Mm-hmm.
or false,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't really matter. I mean, it matters to some people, but you can still get something from it and apply it to your life to see change and growth, regardless. So I felt it like pretty important to like connect those two. And one of the first things that I was writing out probably a few months ago was I don't know if you're familiar with Alex Hermosi at all.
No.
Pretty cool. I'm going to be recommending his book probably towards the end of the episode, but Alex Hermosi is like totally just killing it in the realm of marketing, and just kind of revitalizing and revolutionizing the way that our generation and future generations, for that matter, look at marketing, lead generation, and just business as a whole,
Mm-hmm.
and really seeing it as like fundamentally as us giving and providing value to others and being of service to others, and how that
Mm-hmm.
is like that is the cornerstone. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
money making is not the cornerstone. Money making is a byproduct of that.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are making things easier for people, and you're amplifying their life into greater opportunity, then you are going to be in business, and you could do it through any mode.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things I wrote in there was that we all too, and this happens within our educational system too, which is no wonder why we have so many minds within our generation that are like only want to do things for money, is because we go to school, and the whole high school system like conditions you to be a consumer and or
Mm-hmm.
work in someone else's like basically structure. And like it might teach you some fundamentals to be like a manager, but you're really going to get that if you go to like college, and you get you learn more of that, or hands-on, which is like how you learn anything really at its best. But going through the school system, you're going to be specialized. And when
Mhm.
you're specialized, you bypass being able to understand how to hit the ground running in a way, so that's why you have a
Mhm.
lot of overqualified people sitting with bachelor's degrees and not using them in the industry that they studied.
Mm.
and
Mhm.
and in that same way, this is how people kind of approach business and money by extension, because it's a culture that's formed around that like same template.
Mhm.
And what happens is we want to create things for the sake of money, so then we bypass and put the blinders on to all the actual value points that like spirit in the day is trying to show us and tell us about ourselves, how we connect into the day and other people. And so we're missing all the opportunities to make the money because we're so fixed on the money itself. And
Mhm.
that's like, I'm guilty of it, you know what I mean? Like it's how we are. And the whole thing is that, like, yeah, if you're willing to do it regardless of the money, then your heart's really in it. And now, like you said before, and like your mentor said, like, this isn't the first, or this might be the first, but it's not gonna be the last time that you create something. So don't necessarily
Mhm.
worry about it like being perfect and getting you $1 million. Like, the
Mhm.
whole concept is that like you get good at creating things, and you get good
Mhm.
at rendering opportunity. And then, like, really through that, you think about it, like he put out the free thing. Like, that's one of the first things I did too. As soon as I quit my job, I created a guide, 9 to 5 hacks for spiritual creatives.
Oh,
And I like put it up.
nice.
Yeah, and I was like, I need to put this up. I need to put what I did for like the last 9 months to get myself into this position, and then I'm gonna like make a number two. And this is so now I'm starting to like seed out the ideas for number two.
Yes.
And the concept behind it though is like, you know, how do you use like basic principles of like the law of attraction, or the law of awareness, power of awareness,
Mhm.
to look at your circumstances differently, and like realize that your jobs are not holding you back. Your jobs are actually pushing you forward into either getting a new career or working for
Mhm.
yourself and becoming
Mhm.
self-employed.
Yeah,
But
like if
it's
you
a
save your
matter.
money and invest it, yep, and then open up a business, yep.
Right, yeah, like that's like one of like a bajillion things that we can do, right? Like, it's always fostering opportunity, but if we have the blinders onto it, then we're not seizing it, and we're not
Mhm.
taking a chance or risking it.
Yes.
And yeah, so by putting that out, it's like, has that brought me a substantial level of return? No. But at the same time, yes, because it all depends on how I evaluate the return. Like, so has it brought me more opportunity? Yes. Has it brought me new clients in other respects outside of just the guide itself? Yes. Has it brought me connections into being able to get other clients through other avenues? Yes.
Mhm.
Has it got me more comfortable with realizing how I can frame and extract stuff out of my experiences and template it into an easy to digest form? Yes.
Yeah.
And like, so what I wrote and what I'm starting to write for the second one is that oftentimes we bypass just starting and getting like the snowball rolling. And so we because we're so money driven and we're so results driven, we oftentimes miss the fact that by just starting something and initiating something, we are actually getting more out of the experience and the journey of that than we are the byproduct of money or the results in the end of the
Mhm.
achievement. So the real gold is like through being in the process and being of service to people or rendering products for people. And
Yes.
so if you're doing that, like, nothing's going to stop you. But people are so fixed on this idea that like they have to be making the money. So it's like they go out and they create a product or an ebook or something like that, and they don't get any money for it, or they get very little money for it, or no one says anything good about it, and they stop after even
Yes.
giving it out to 5 to 10 people. And it's like
Mhm.
they don't even realize that like you probably got to give that out to like 5,000 people at least in an ad or something, or like, a pretty high number of people before you're actually going to see what the effective aspects of it are. and
Mhm.
and and that's, going back to Gary Vee, and he talks about that. A lot of people, including myself, we oftentimes want to step up to the plate and like swing first time ever, like stepping out on to the plate, and we want to hit it out the park, and like we want a home run. And because we
Mhm.
don't get that home run in the first few swings, we give up and we move on to something else, and then we repeat that process. But
Yeah.
like he said, for him, and like what the entrepreneurial mindset really should be in, and I think the same thing with the alchemist mindset, the spiritual mindset, is that you're in it for the long haul. And so you're willing to swing 80 times. And by the time, like, so someone else is over there and they're like calculating, or they're like crying about the fact that they swung 3 times and didn't make it, and they're disappointed in that. He's swung like 50 times
Yeah,
and he's
because you
not
know
complaining.
you know that you're gonna get it. You just have to get to that moment.
Right. Yeah. And then if you swing 50 times, you're going to be way better on that 51st time versus someone who swung 6 times and now they're just swinging their seventh, you
Mm-hmm.
know? Like you like take Kobe Bryant, for example. Like everybody knows him for his 3 pointers, everybody knows him for all of the games, right? And all the trophies. But like how many people would realize the fact that he probably took more L's and missed more
Mm.
shots than a majority of people out there?
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, we never think about it like that because we see the result, we see the byproduct that we call success, and we think that that's the achievement. But like the true gold is like being exposed to all the fucked up shit along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all, like people were like, oh, if only I was that lucky, if only I
Yeah.
was that lucky, all this greatness falls on. It's like, yeah, things do happen like that, but those are enigmas. Like
Yeah.
realistically, you
Or they
really put your
appear
nose
that
into
way.
Brian's. Yeah, they appear that way, and then we feel that way because yeah, we see the end. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like
Exactly.
we
You
don't
never
see the
really see the
hardship.
beginning of people exactly. Like even like for anybody, like that's just any regular person or even the people that you would talk to, like they often don't really tell you like all of their embarrassing moments or the things that they did wrong before they really reach their success. So yeah, and that goes for everything because you can even like start a job where you're not using your creativity, not doing anything, and then you'll just be like just in that same mentality. Sorry, I like lost my train of thought right now already.
Oh, you're good. You're good. You're good.
Just
Yeah.
forget it. Yeah, I completely lost it.
No, we both have busy days as we were talking about earlier, so I get it. But no, I mean it happens. It happens in the human experience, and I mean with age comes wisdom, and I mean yeah, it's inevitable to unfold, but I guess the adage of it all is that like yeah, you just take chances, like take
Hmm.
chances and expose yourself to more in life, and life will show you patterns. But if we're if
Yes.
we're if we're too quick on thinking that we're just like we're entitled, like entitlement and arrogance is what cuts most people off from being able to actually like evolve in their life. And I only know
Hmm.
from my own experience, because like I still face that to this day. Because it'd be easy for me to just be like, go over to this guy's house that's been studying kung fu for 45 plus years, and then like I could like I'm all inspired by this guy. I'm watching him do his thing with his commander that he's appointed, this guy he's been working with for over a year and a half or whatever.
Hmm.
And like I'm like, oh wow, this is amazing. Like I'm absorbing it. I'm seeing the parallels to all my appreciation for breath work, etc. And I could have, if I had a sore attitude, like I could have just been there and been like, why am I not as good as him?
Oh, I know, right? There's people, that think that way, but you could fix that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and then like but why we think that, you know what I mean? And I mean, there's a lot of different reasons, but it goes back to the instant gratification thing versus, the delayed gratification,
Hmm.
because the idea is that everything will unfold as it needs to, like the most beautiful flowers blossom slowly. And if you're like so quick to be like, yeah, this guy, like he's a masterful at kung fu because he's been doing it for 45 years, and like to be upset because it's like your first day and you're
Hmm.
witnessing it, it's like you're living in your own lie. You know what I mean? You're
Yeah,
like,
like it's you're too much in the ego, basically. Yeah.
right, yeah, and you're like, I want this thing now. I don't want to wait 45 years. But it's like, yeah, but even if you were
Hmm.
able, if you were like Neo in the Matrix, you could just like plug in and then download all the information and just like it like that, you wouldn't appreciate it.
Exactly. And that's like something that I had to write in my journal the other day because I was contemplating about like, just seeing the future because like when you do grow and like like let's just say you do breath work, you do yoga and all these things, it really does help you like see things more clearly, right? It brings clarity to your life. And I was wondering like I keep getting more clarity. I feel like things are more clear, but it's not like 100% clear where I can tell what I'm gonna, I can tell you everything that I'm going to do tomorrow. Like I'm not able to tell the future. And then, obviously just talking to self and being like, well, we can't see the future because like you already know you're going to be changing things around if you did see it, or you're going to be acting different. So you're going to give off a
Yep.
different energy. And it's just like, that's why we're not supposed to see everything about our future. Like,
Right.
yes, you can be like a pioneer or a visionary and see things ahead of time before they come. But for you to see all the details and everything 100% is not meant for us, because it's just not going to turn out that way anymore as soon as because it changes everything.
Yeah, it's true. That was really well said. And, this is something I have to constantly be reminded of. Over the last few months, I've really been anchoring into that truth. Just because like I have so many ideas. Like I have like my creativity is just endless, and it's just everyone's. But I get to this point where I got thousands of notes and just so many
Mhm.
concepts and ideas and brainstorms. And I realized that like ultimately I don't even need all of it. Like ultimately, like this is probably, I think this is maybe if I'm gonna spit some game, like like I think like most people that are creatives or they're good at many things, like they could crush it if they reduced it down to like the one thing that they feel like is of most service to other people, that they enjoy and that they're good at. And if they just
Mm.
focused on like that one thing, because I'm still guilty of it. Like I've reduced it down to two things, but it's
I know.
still hard. Like it's still hard for me to even just do that and still not want to couple it up with other things. I end up doing it. I have to like reassess it every few weeks and then like rear back. But if anyone's out there listening and they're really good at all these various things and they dream big and all this, if they could just reduce it down to that one thing that is of the most service to others, that produces the greatest results for others, that they're good at and they enjoy, then they just anchor into that and like build that up in discipline, and then as it builds, toss in all the other things, because like that one thing, if you can like find success in one thing, then you can repeat that and template that around other things, and then you have that
Mm.
snowball like giving you energy and momentum. And that's something that's taken me like, I mean, my whole life, but like really 5 years of pursuing like online, marketing and business framing, to realize is that like less is so much more. And like some people are honestly out, like a lot of people actually are out there and they're really not that deep, they're really not that talented, but they're just really determined,
Mm.
and they stick with it. And like there's a lot of people in the music industry, um in all different sectors, that are amazing, and they didn't really have to be that talented, they were just very persistent. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that has a lot to teach all of us that are really deep, that are really creative, that are innovators, that are movers and shakers of the time, is that if we could just get like even a sliver of that amount of discipline to just say, hey, like I'm just not going to give up on this one thing and I'm going to see it through regardless of how uncomfortable it is,
Mm-hmm.
like we would see all of those deep, imaginative, explorative lists of thousands of concepts come to life.
Mm-hmm.
And but we get spread thin. I do it all the time.
Yes,
Like this is like
me
this is like
too.
my biggest uphill battle. Is that like I have like I'm so good at a lot of things, and so I'm not great at one thing.
Mm-hmm. Like that whole jack of all trades, but never a master of one. Or no,
Right? Yeah.
what is it? How does it go? Do you know?
No, that's right. You said it. Yeah, it's jack of all trades, master of none.
Okay, yeah. But there was this other video I seen too on Instagram. It said like that there's like a second part to it, but someone just made that up and added it. But it was like jack of all trades, master of none, but something else. But it added on to it and it was kind of like a counter to that.
Yeah. I mean, you could counter it for sure, because just like we were saying earlier today, like everything is
It's
going on as
good.
it shall. So it's
Yeah.
like because I
That
wouldn't be here to be
duality.
able to say that, and yeah, exactly. I wouldn't be able to be here and say it if I hadn't gone through, the 10 plus years of doing all the various shenanigans around music that I've done, or the last
Oh,
5 of like really anchoring and trying to do business. Like I
yeah.
wouldn't have the awareness that like, hey, I could just anchor in and do it on one thing with the totality of all those experiences. And that's the trade-off, right? Because in the end of the day, there's going to be somebody out there that, they've done one thing really freaking well and gained a lot of like money, success, etc. with it, but they don't feel fulfilled. So like,
Yes. Good
and then they're
point.
going to be, yeah, they're going to go out and be like, oh, you know what I mean? Like they might
Woe
be
is
the
me.
master of one, but they don't have diversity within their life, and like, and this, like a lot of different
Exactly.
avenues that they've experienced. So
Hmm.
it's always a trade-off, but given the nature of your podcast, I'm assuming that there's probably a good amount of Imagineers out there that are just like feeling wiped and like spread thin. But if
Yes.
not, then take the advice in the opposite direction.
Yeah, and that's a good point because even like with my, I guess with my first business, I started doing like food. So I was doing like plant-based food and like
Oh,
doing
cool.
vending and all that stuff. And so it went really well. Like even thinking back at it now after our conversation, I remember passing out free samples to people way before I started selling the food. And so then that probably helped me in general just manifest that. So that turned out well. Like I almost opened up a restaurant, but at 2020, because literally everything had just closed down, I was renting out a restaurant like on Sundays to do like a vegan brunch because they were
Oh,
not
dope.
open on Sundays. And so I was already in there, like I was already paying rent to be in there one day. She was going to sell me the business for 20K, which is a really good deal for a restaurant, even though it had to be fixed up majorly. Like they probably had to like tear out that whole kitchen and rebuild it. But I didn't end up doing it. And I don't think back and say like, wow, I could have like had a lot of money owning a business, having a vegan food. Because I look at how the economy is now, especially right here in Southern California, and all of these like plant-based restaurants that opened up in the same area that were or would have been my competition have all closed down because like this area is just not, it's just doesn't, it's not like San Diego. San Diego, like you can open up a vegan place and it'll be around for a while because there's just a lot of people out there like that. This area just, it wasn't for that. So I would have failed. I would have not been like present in some of the like most key years of my kid's life because I would have been so busy doing that. And so for
Yep.
me, it was just like a lesson. Like that first business taught me a lot of discipline in business, a lot of customer service, a lot of like management, time management, all of these different things. And I'm just using that for my future endeavors because it was an experience. And a lot of people, like even Gary Vee and all these other entrepreneurs, they always remind you that like their first business didn't soar, it didn't succeed. It was just like a practice run. And then they went on to do other things.
Yeah, absolutely. That's super well said. I mean, yeah, that is the adage in the end. Like even beyond the whole jack of all trades, master of none, or vice versa. Like the real like tried and true lesson, which is the eternal expression of the universe, regardless, is don't
Mhm.
give up. Never give
Yeah.
up, and continually take all of the setbacks and the gains and compile them into new creations. And as long as you do that, you really can't lose. But like the biggest thing that makes most people fail is not trying. Like straight up
Yeah.
is what it is. Because you could lose a basket, you could lose a shot, you could lose a deal. Um, but you're always going to gain a lesson. So, like with that attitude in mind, and like with that perseverance, I mean, that is like, I think that's one of the top three like attributes to be successful in anything, is to just be perseverant and persist. Like if you
Hmm.
persist, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you're starting. If you're starting at 0 or 100, like you're going to you're going to beat anybody else out who isn't persistent. I don't care if they're
Yeah.
110. If they stop, they stop, and they're no longer in it. So
Hmm.
if someone's persistent, yeah, the sky's the limit.
That's true. And you know what? I was going through like the whole list of questions, and we basically did answer them all. Like we talked about, your 2020 was actually like the Saturn return, major shifts in your life, unless you had something else for like a deepest life lesson.
No, I would just say, and great questions, by the way, and really
Oh,
great
thank you.
talking with you. But the only other thing I would say two things, and then maybe I'll share some books. But I want to say one thing. One thing I want to say is going to be more personal. The other thing is going to be a little bit more extra personal. But I think it's really important for us to accept that like our traumas, our setbacks, all the fucked up scenarios we're surrounded by are not the detriment of us in
Mm.
totality. Like all the fuck ups, all the family discrepancies, all the broken relationships, all the letdowns of yourself, your addictions, your habits, your all those things are actually the seeds to the best of you and the seeds to the best of your story. And I think that like that's a very common thing that I encounter when I'm working with people as a coach, but also just studying others, like studying entrepreneurs, studying spiritualists throughout the centuries and throughout the eons, etc. It's just that like so often we want to move towards the gold and we want to like try to divert the shit, but like the shit is where the actual like potential for gold is. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
the more we can get that into our thick skulls as humans, the better we can architect a beautiful world. And the other thing, and that was a bit more of the extra personal side, but the for all my personal journey, I one thing I left out that I think is really pivotal for me personally was just psilocybin. Like I feel like it was just paramount to the unraveling of everything on my journey around the age of like 21, 22 was
Mm-hmm.
when I utilized them. I wasn't really big into like partying with them or anything like that. I didn't use them excessively or routinely. Um, happened to use them like once or twice at that age and a few other times since. But it just was like, for me personally, I'm not recommending it for anybody. Do what thou wilt. But like, I just really found a whole new perspective on myself and life and like the nature of spirituality
Mm-hmm.
that I really couldn't have dreamt of, and it unfolded into a lot of really beautiful things from then on. And I feel like for anybody who might feel like afraid of things in life or just feel like they are boxed in or just really strapped with like routines. Um, if they, if they, if they're just ultimately, it doesn't have to just be through psychedelics. You know what I mean? This is why I say like I'm not necessarily recommending them, but find find something that ultimately rekindles your life force, and that might be sitting in a drum circle. That might be going to a dance hall. It might be going on a hike to the top of a mountain. Um, but whatever it is, like I think just shaking things up a bit is really important for us. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's how we kickstart like our neuroplasticity. It's how we kickstart our activity within our mental construct and our conscious construct is by introducing new variables. And like trying things new is hard because you got to be humbled by it. You got to sometimes you got to be the least good at it within the room.
Mm-hmm.
But like when you're willing to expose yourself to the unknowns of life, you get to grow and come to learn the unknown sides of yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
that's been a really big like kind of theme within my life since I took psychedelics. But I think you can get it just from traveling. I think you can get it from moving out of a place if you've lived in a place your whole life. I think
Mm-hmm.
you can get it by trying to pick up a new instrument or a new practice. And I think that like novelty, I think that's ultimately what I'm getting to here is like novelty is the essence of like personal evolution and it being exposed to new novel things, new novel ways of perceiving, I think is really important for us to overcome stagnation within our personal
Mm-hmm.
energetic fields.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it. And then the last question oh no, before I do the last question, I definitely wanted you to go ahead and like tell anybody what your book recommendations were because you mentioned like two already earlier or like one specifically, I'm like, I want to know more about it. But yeah, any of your book recommendations?
Yeah, so I think I mentioned Neville Goddard, The Power of Awareness.
Okay. Oh, I haven't read
Are we-
that one either. I need to write that down.
oh, dude, definitely read that one. And if you or anybody that's tuning in vibes with it,
Mhm.
um, hit me up. And like, if you're interested, I do free coaching calls or free consultations. So we can basically just wrap up about the book. Um, I don't have any firm expectations on like, you becoming a full-time client or anybody for that matter becoming a full-time
Mhm.
client because that might not be what's best for them or me. And
Mhm.
I think it's also important for people the practice to just open up and just be of service.
Mhm.
But Neville Goddard, The Power of Awareness, that's transformed my life over the last year. If you're interested in the law of attraction and things of that nature, it'll be right up your alley. Um,
That's very fitting right now.
yeah. Yeah, and I feel like a lot of people dig the law of attraction, and I think it's cool. I think it's important, and I think it's definitely a hot word within our time and culture. But like, but that's more of like it's kind of like what gets produced out of the power of awareness. So it's like what Neville Goddard calls the law of assumption. So the law of assumption activates the law of attraction. And I think that's the next phase. I think there's a lot of people, especially in our peer group, that are like coming to awareness of this. But
Mhm.
I think that's the next phase for the hype, is going to be like, oh, wherever you constantly envision and practice the nature of your feeling is like what you cultivate in your life. I don't know how it's going to be spun, but yeah, so the Power of Awareness by Neville Goddard. Excuse me, my battery's getting a little low there. Okay,
Okay.
just let me know. But yeah, so the Power of Awareness by Neville Goddard would be my number one. A little more cliche, but Think and Grow Rich. I'm sure you're familiar with
Mm.
it.
Oh, I actually have a copy up.
Yeah, I'm sure your viewers are familiar with it, but that's a good one. If you like Think and Grow Rich, you'll like the Power of Awareness because there are some commonalities there. There's some differences, but
Okay.
there are overlapping like uh, tendencies there. And then I mean, I have a lot, but I would say on a more like practical entrepreneurial side, anything by Alex Hormozy. And the cool thing about Alex Hormozy's work, for anybody who's not already familiar, you can start with like $100 million offer or the $100 million leads, which is his newest book. You can access not only his book and his audiobook, but you can access his entire course free of charge.
Oh,
And
nice.
and essentially he templates out in all of his work $100 million offer literally will teach you how to shape and form $100 million offer around whatever it is that you have as a product or service.
Oh,
uh,
nice.
and then $100 million leads is how to generate leads and market and advertise towards that. And but he does it all for free, which is really dope. If the only way that you can actually move beyond his free services and products is if you're $1 million a year business. So his whole angle is that his books, his audiobooks, and all of his like his podcast, his online workshops, they're all free with the exception like if you go to like Audible, you have to pay for that, or like if you order the
Hmm.
book, you pay for the cost of what it would cost to print the book. But other than that, all the website, all his courses, all of that stuff's free.
Hmm.
Uh, and when you go in there, his main angle is to essentially get more business into the hands of like everybody, regardless of their economic situation,
Oh,
so
nice. Hmm.
they comprehend it. And then once you scale, if you scale to over $1 million a year business, then he wants to invest in you, which is like really smart,
Oh,
right?
wow. Hmm.
So he's never really asking for anything. He's actually giving and giving and giving and giving.
Yes, that makes
But then he,
sense. Wow.
or once you employ or use his ways, he'll invest in you. So then you can both make money together. So it's pretty genius.
Hmm. Yep.
Uh, but then yeah, so those are the three books I would recommend off top. Other than that, yeah. Yeah. Any other things you want to close with?
That was good. Okay, the last question, the most juiciest one. Well, I mean, I just think it's fitting to be the last question. So basically, where do you see the world in 20 years?
Hmm. It's a great question, and I wish I had a great answer for it.
I know. I know. We're all trying to be fortune tellers these days, but there's a reason why we can't see
Yeah,
it.
honestly, yeah, if I was gonna like, I'm really into dystopian novels and stuff, so I'm gonna try not to get like too crazy with it because I'm also, I believe in hermetic principles too, so it's like there's always going to be the correspondence. So it's not just going to be, I don't think that we're all going to be wallied out, like floating in chairs as obese people with like straws up to our mouths and like
Oh
not participating
yeah.
in activity. I think what will occur, and this is just like, because we haven't even gone into a lot of the other topics I would love to share. So if you ever want to chat it up on the side or do another one of these, I'd be
Yes.
open to it.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, for sure.
but like, as far as like AI, crypto, quantum tech, you name it. Like there's a lot of interplanetary travel. All that stuff's going to come to play. But I think we're going to see a strong divide between like polarities within our society and our culture. I
Hmm.
think that that's going to form like personally this is what I think based on where we are right now. I'm going to use where we are right now and then kind of like launch within my
Hmm.
projection. So like I think that we're going to see all of our bigger cities continue to tank while they simultaneously are going to be revitalized with like new technologies and
Hmm.
sustainability. But then I think and personally I don't necessarily agree with that. That isn't the way that I would like to see things go,
Yeah.
but in I kind of think that's going to happen because of the powers that be and the way that things are situated geopolitically, etc., as well as innovation and business, etc. But then outside of that, what I think would happen in the polarity is that I think that you're going to have like more close knit communities, especially that are more involved in like philosophy, spirituality, etc. Getting involved in things like permaculture and off grid ways of living, as well as returning to the land in like more smaller nodes. And I think that those are going to be coexisting. So I think that you'll have like smart cities that become
Hmm.
more maybe in some ways more opportunistic, but then also at the same time potentially more dystopian and more like everything's being monitored and you're like being calculated as you're there, maybe even like overly um, suggested to. But that's kind of already the case, But just maybe
Hmm.
in the future, and then I think that I think that those two are going to be kind of coexisting, and I think that in certain ways, like the fight's going to wage on. I'm not this. I don't believe that like we're all just going to become robots and we're all going to lose our sovereignty and then we're all just going to be a subject to the system. And I also don't believe that we're going to just all be like free and we're just going to have spiritual paradise. Like I personally don't believe in either of those. I think that the inevitable unfolding of the exchange between the two will always be there because I think that's necessary in the way that life represents itself in duality.
Hmm.
And I think that at its best from that, we will find ways to harmonize through it. And that's what we've always been doing, anyways. This world's always been at war with itself, but it's always been in love with itself. So I kind of like you study what has been to see what's going to happen. And then
Yeah.
I'm just putting my own dystopian, innovative like twist on it.
Hmm. Because that's true. I mean, we're seeing a lot of technology now, so it's like it's like now, but it definitely won't look like now. You know what I mean? And it's
Hmm.
gonna be, yeah, things change with our eyes, but not really so much with the energy.
Right. Yeah. I think there'll be a lot of people that are even more asleep and a lot of people that are even more awake.
Hmm. And that's true because I've even like I know I had a friend give me this book a few years ago about like how the whole dystopian thing is going to come into play because it's already with the cybersecurity and everything.
Right.
So yeah, but that's good. That's a really good insight. I feel like I'm going to start asking all of my guests that question. You're the first
That's good.
one, so
Cool. Yeah. And this is episode 7, right?
yes. Yes, and it
Cool.
was nice. 7 is a great number, right? It's like all it's godly and everything. And then that's this year's number 2, the energy of 2023 is 7. So
Yep.
yes, very enlightening. Well, Kev, thank you so much for being on tonight. It was nice. And I definitely will call you back for another show because this is exactly the kind of stuff that we need to like display and teach people. Like everything that me and you talked about today was just like so on point and very like synchronistic to things that are just going on in my life.
Yeah, it was fun. I'm surprised at how much we squeezed in there. I really appreciate you just being so receptive to all the crazy amounts of talk that I brought in. But it's cool that we could relate on all those various topics. But yeah, I felt like I got to honestly sum up the bulk of like everything that I've been really digging into these last few years, and I feel like it's been all across the board. But yet somehow it's had like a common vein within all of it.
Yeah.
Really funny how life works like that. But no, the pleasure is all mine. I really appreciate being on here just the same. And yeah, and once again, if anybody's just looking for like mindset coaching or anything like that, feel free to hit me up. I do free consultations.
Yes. Tell
Uh,
them your Instagram and your website or anything else that you could give them.
oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, so aquavision.com, AWKWA vision.com. That's my website. If you go there, the first thing you're going to find is a bunch of audio. So a bunch of like basically instrumentals or beats, most of
Hmm.
them in the realm of hip hop, but very experimental and ethereal in ways. And those are available for license. The free download, if it's a nonprofit, just download it, use it, see if you like it. If you do and you want to
Mm,
monetize it for your music or for your
that's cool.
podcast or video edits, anybody can do that. And there's options, there's free options, there's payment options, etc. And then I should have a contact option on there if you want to get like an audio mix done. I'll even do a
Mm.
free analysis, so like I can let you know where your audio stands, ways you can improve it. If you want to use my services, you can. If not, hit the ground running. You can do whatever you want on your own. I don't mind either way. And then just the same in the realm of the coaching, you should be able to get in contact with me on that too. But everything I do is free. I offer everything for free, and then you could try things out. If you like them, great. If not, all good. I'm not tripping. I'm just here to be of service.
For sure. All right, sounds good. My gosh. So, I feel like there was something else I was going to tell you, but I kind of forgot. But definitely I'm going to stay in touch. I mean, like now that we're like we've had a good talk, like we already like we have a good connection, so I can keep in touch with you and any more
Yeah,
questions.
absolutely.
And I'll send you that frequency list because it's like I think it's great. I mean, I can't really make that much use of it unless I'm just looking for some tunes to listen to, but I know that it'll be of great use for you, so I'll forward you that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, pick my brain anytime for like resource, or if you want to send resource my way, I'm all about that.
Cool.
I think at this point, like I do a lot more of that. I actually haven't even been active on social media for like almost a month. And
Mm.
and it's not because I don't have stuff to share. It's honestly it's just what I felt intuitively to just
Yeah.
be with my baby, be with my wife, just focus on the land, focus on things with my clients, and yeah, I don't know. I want to do it, but every time I go to do it, I just don't feel right. So I'm like, I don't
Yeah,
want to
I
make a
feel that
post.
too. I'll have like moments where I disappear for a while and stuff like that. And sometimes I always tell myself, I give myself a hard time, which I shouldn't. But when I do step away for a while, I'll be like, Yvette, you really have to, like, you really have to engage, blah, blah. And then I beat myself up about it. But I'm like, hey, but I'm a mom too. And I have like, and I have my
Yes,
grandma, I do my grandma's laundry, I get her groceries and stuff. So, yeah, so, whenever,
that's the important
but
stuff too. That's the important stuff. And then it's really helpful that you're doing things like this, because now it'll be really easy for me to like if you're going to post this on YouTube or you have the podcast or however you post it, like send me the links, and
yes.
then I can very easily share that out with people in conversation. But I can also take like all the micro content and
Oh,
then just
I
like repost
know.
it for the next 6 months because we've talked about so much stuff tonight.
Definitely. I know I told myself the same thing. I was like, I'm gonna have so many more little clips in this one than I have of my others because it was just like so it was really on time, like really cool.
Yeah, we went on a lot of things, dude. I'm like, a lot of people might. I feel like half your viewers are gonna tune in and they're gonna be like, "Wow, this is awesome! Like, I love all the different places we went, all the different dimensions we jumped through." And then I
I
feel like other people would be
know.
like, "This motherfucker needs to slow down and quit having ADHD."
Right? No, because there is that sometimes when you're barely coming into it, you're just like, it's too much, but it's gonna be there and they'll probably have to listen to it a few times just to get like all those gems. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like, I'm consolidating a lot of shit, and I feel like a lot of this has happened since COVID. Like, it's caused me to like I don't know, just go into quantum levels of reflecting, you know what I
Yeah.
mean, and absorbing and relaying, and it's just that's my job. I'm Aquarius, so it's like
Okay.
that's
Well, that's what the
that,
coronavirus was. It's all like, crown
yeah,
chakra. Well, I
right. And I
believe so
remember that.
because I went through it, definitely.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I remember one of my really good friends mentioning that in the beginning, because in the beginning, before they deemed the illness like the virus itself was referred to as the coronavirus, and I remember people talking about how that like correlates to the nature of the crown. And
Yeah.
so in a lot of ways, like even if that wasn't the intention of the quote unquote they,
Mm,
it could have been on the grand divine level, like, you know what I mean. And they're just, the grand divine orchestration is just utilizing all these players. And then so like the deeper mythos of
yes, I've thought
fiction is
about
like,
that.
yeah, I think about that with all of it. You know what I mean? So that's what makes me kind of laugh about it, because I'll get in my own head about these things sometimes, and I'll be like tripping out, just as
Mm-hmm.
we do, because we observe things, and human beings have natural survival instincts. So like when I'm worried about the boogeyman of the they, or the things that go on in life, like I remember that like it's me. It's
Yeah.
not my decision making directly in my timeline and how I identify, but like ultimately it's another version of me.
Mm-hmm.
And this whole entire universal existence, it's got a pretty good handle on things. We just get unsure about it because we don't see it immediately, so we're like, what is they doing, or like what is going on like this spooky level.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it's all exactly what it's supposed to be, and not to make us lazy, but just to give us the confidence to push through.
Yes, I like that you mentioned that, not to make us lazy, because like you with the whole manifestation thing, we talked about how it's like, oh well, yeah, I can manifest it if I want, but it's really not that easy.
Right, yeah, it's all paradoxical. You said that word earlier, and that hits the nail on the head, because the deeper that I've dug into spiritual studies in general, that's what I ended up coming to, is just that it is paradoxical. Because I mean, you think about it, like the way I like to size it up. You're familiar with Alan Watts, yeah?
Yes.
So yeah, I'll end on this. I love studying him throughout my 20s, and one of my favorite talks that he has, or favorite lectures, is he talks about like let's imagine that you're God for a moment,
Mm-hmm.
like you're the omnipotent one. And you have to figure, like, he was doing this in like the 60s, right? So he was doing this during a time that you were coming out of like really deep, like Bible Belt themed America, and
Mm-hmm.
like just deeply entrenched in Western like philosophy, not as open to the Eastern esoteric wisdom. So he was just like, yeah, everybody in this room, let's go ahead and pretend for a moment that you were God, like the Judeo-Christian God. And so you were like the creator of all things, and you knew everything from the beginning to the end of it. And if you were sitting there in your omnipotence and you knew everything from the beginning to the end, you wouldn't have anything new. You would know it all. You'd be a literal know it all. You would know
Yeah.
everything, and you have no surprises. You'd have no opportunity to grow. You'd have no opportunity to struggle or gain or learn. So the only thing you'd have left to do is to forget. And if you forewent knowing all of it, then you might find yourself sitting here listening to this conversation.
Oh my God. That's really good.
It's
Wow.
all beautiful. I like it's comical, but it's beautiful at the same time, because it's like
Yes.
it's so relevant to anybody who gets involved in hearing it. And then it,
Mm-hmm.
it it puts God back into like the
The
simple spectrum,
simplicity.
rather than,
Yes.
yeah.
Totally. All right. Well, I can relate to that. That's why, like, I know for sure this one won't be the last one, because it's like we only have nothing but like light to show everybody. So, all right
Yeah,
then. Thank you
yeah,
so much,
light.
Kev. But yes, I'm gonna have to head out because I gotta wake up at 4. So I'm still doing
Yeah,
that
yeah.
whole
I'm probably gonna have to wake up early too, because my kiddo, and I've got like a billion things on my list that I'm gonna trust will unfold as they need to. But
yes.
but I really appreciate you, Yvette, and yes, we shall chat soon.
No, totally 100%. I appreciate you as well. All right. So good night. Take care, and I'll be in touch.
All right, peace and blessings.
All right. Bye.
Right, right. Yeah, I like that. Like super well said. Yeah.